Welcome back, everybody, to another Ask the Expert live Q&A with me, Joe Everest, the fence expert. So today is as you guys probably read in the description today, I think what we want to talk about is marketing. You know, I see it a lot in the Facebook groups, marketing now, especially, now that we're getting into the busy season, you see guys and gals talking about marketing a lot, which, if you ask me, is a bit backwards. The timing's a bit off, but we'll get into that. I appreciate you guys joining me. Let's say hi to some folks. If you're here and you haven't said hi yet, drop a comment in the comments below. Let me know you're here and where you're from, and we'll try to build a mental picture of where everyone's watching from right now. Rogers was first in, says, hi, I was born in Toledo, Ohio, and currently live outside Houston. Roger, welcome, and thank you for being the first commenter on the live stream. Check that out. Cannon Johnson's with us from West Tennessee, Jackson Fence. What's up, Cannon? Cannon and Dan also have a live show. Their show's every Tuesday evening. If you haven't had a chance to watch them, you should. Jane Garner's visiting or watching from Portland, Oregon. Hello, Jane. I actually have some extended family outside of Portland. It was my grandfather's siblings. They were all from Oregon and Washington State. So, welcome. David Olson's watching from Madison, Wisconsin, Madison Fence Company. Welcome, David. So glad you're with us. Wally's with us. Wally's with us every week. I shouldn't single out Wally. A lot of you guys, especially, I think Roger's maybe the longest standing supporter of the channel, watcher of the channel, however you'd like to say it. But Wally's with us from Ottawa, Canada. Hello, Wally. How are you, sir? Tommy Ventura's with us. Look at that. Hey, Joe, watching from New Hampshire. Tommy, welcome. I know we've chatted in some of the fence groups, so it's good to see you here on the channel. I appreciate it. Makito's with us as always. Welcome, Makito. Oh, check it out. Sean King, Mr. Fence in the house. Welcome back, Sean. Hope your trip was safe. If you guys remember, if you guys watched last week, Sean was with us in a live panel discussion from Florida. And he had to cut out a little bit early because the beach was calling his name, and I can't blame him. Billy Grove, hello from Pensacola, Florida. Hello, Billy. How are you? Glad you're with us. All right. Kasurik Distributors. I hope I didn't butcher that. Hey, Joe, Chris from Kasurik Distributors in Philadelphia. Hello, Philly. Chris Steele, if you guys watched last week, you also saw Chris up here on the panel discussion. Hey, Joe from Pensacola, Florida. Check out the Florida representation today. Durfboy 06 in Columbus, Ohio, finishing up a 300-foot job. Go get it. It's early enough in the day. That should get you off the job site by the heat of the day. So that'd be probably a good idea. I don't know. What's the weather like in Ohio? Maybe it's not that hot today. It's supposed to hit mid-80s here today, so it's already feeling a little bit warm outside. Anyway, Tyler K checking in from Wisconsin. What is up, Tyler K? Actually, my wife's brother-in-law lives in Wisconsin, Kenosha. We go up there and visit occasionally. Hello, Wisconsin. Kenny DeVille, good morning to you, sir. Hello from the Gulf of Mexico. He's watching in the Gulf. So welcome, Kenny. Check it out. I think we all know who this is. What's up, Mark Olson? Technically, Why Fly Guy. If you guys haven't watched that channel, you ought to. I don't even fly. Like I fly commercially. I don't even fly. I don't even have my own plane. I watch all Mark's flying content. I live vicariously through Mark. It's always a good time. Jerf Boy says 300. He's wrapping up that 300-foot project. It's perfect. Only have a double gate to finish. Sounds like you're in the home stretch, my friend. Well, guys, appreciate you tuning in. So, as we always do, I'm answering your guys' questions live. It's kind of one of those Ask Me Anythings live Q&A. But also, I want to talk about marketing. So, in the description, well, depending on where you saw it, the description likely said we're going to talk about marketing to internal and external customers. So, one thing we should probably talk about is the difference between internal and external customers. External customers are exactly what you think. They're the clients that you have out there in the world that you build fences for, if you're a fence builder. The internal clients, internal customers are going to be your team members. what my dad and granddad used to call employees, which it was a different way of thinking about things. We'll say that. So we like to call them team members because we're all a team here, right? So we're family owned. My company is a family owned and operated fence company since 1955. We actually, when we're doing the interview process, we actually just wrapped up a round of interviews last week. Part of the interview process is that we're a family owned and operated fence company. Me and my sister and my dad kind of make this thing tick and keep it pointed in the right direction. And we like to feel like our team members are our extended family. And it sounds cheesy, but it's true. I know the guys, I know their significant others and their kiddos, and we're all just kind of team orange here. Sean likes to tell everybody they're team blue, and he's got a bunch of other guys on team blue. We need to start team orange. We need to figure that out. So who else out there is orange? Let's get team orange started. That was a quick aside. Anyway, internal clients are our employees, our team members, right? So you need to keep both sides of the coin happy, internal and external. Without internal clients, team members, they're not going to keep your external clients, your customers, happy. And happy customers make for happy business, right? So how do you market for internal customers, internal clients, team members? So we do it in a couple ways. I mean, one, traditionally, so we just ran interviews last week, and we started off on Facebook. We've had success there in the past, finding team members. This time around, not so successful. I think we actually generated 3 or 4 appointments or interviews from Facebook, which is fairly disappointing. Usually we're used to getting 20 or 30. So then Sarah popped in and said, what we ought to try? We ought to try Indeed. Do you think fence guys and gals hang out on Indeed? I don't know. I mean, let's give it a shot. So she created it and the ad in Indeed and ran it. And then sure enough, we had 27 appointments, 27 interviews scheduled last week. Like I said, I only think 3 of those were Facebook. So if my quick math is right, about 24 of those came from Indeed. So we had really good success with Indeed for setting up appointments. Now, of those 27 interviews, 6 actually showed up. So in order to schedule an interview, they had to click on a scheduling link, enter in all of their information, and then pick a day and time that was good for them. They had to do a little bit of work. 27 people filled out that form and followed the process. 6 of them showed up, and we ended up hiring 3 of those 6. So for us lately, if you guys are looking for team members, you might try Indeed. Keep your internal customers happy. Let's catch up with some of the comments here. Mark says, someday I'm going to come pick you up and take you for a flight. And that would be amazing. I would like that a whole lot. Roger says, hey, everyone, don't forget to hit the like. Roger's right. Roger, thank you. I appreciate that. Actually, that was a good reminder because one thing I'm supposed to talk to you guys about is, of course, liking, just like Roger said. So I appreciate that, but also subscribing. So we were going over with my YouTube coach, our YouTube coach, mentor, that sort of thing, our analytics for the last 60 days. And one thing we noticed is 95% of the video views are not subscribers. Only 5% of the video views were viewed by those who actually subscribe to the channel. So now, if you guys are here on a live stream on a Saturday morning, there's a good chance you're already subscribed. And if so, thank you. If not, hit that subscribe button below. You might check it just to make sure it's checked, because I found myself the other night, I was watching it. I watch sailing shows. Do I own a sailboat? No. I live vicariously through people that sail through the Caribbean and around Australia, New Zealand. Anyway, there's this channel I've been watching for probably the last 6 months. I watch each and every week when new content comes out. But I noticed I hadn't subscribed to it. Still showing up on my page, still there for me to consume their content. But I hadn't actually subscribed. So anyway, I hit subscribe, and like I'm always preaching, I hit the notification bell. So as they have new content available, I'll get a notification instead of relying on my YouTube home screen to tell me when they have new content available. Anyway, all that being said, Roger, thank you for the reminder on that. Be more like Roger. Give this thing a like. Roger's welcoming everybody. Hello, everybody. And Mark. Mark says, we use Applicant Pro, which pushes to Indeed. Interesting. So it's a third-party app that then pushes to Indeed. That's good to know. Like I said, we had really good luck on Indeed as far as scheduling. And actually, all of the hires we made came through Indeed. So in the future, rather than putting job postings on Facebook, I think we're going to be sticking with Indeed. It's like pre-qualifying fence leads using My Salesman. Yeah, so that's what we were trying to do with, scheduling the appointment. So schedule or the interview. So to do it, like I said, you had to click on a calendar link similar to Calendly, enter in all your contact information, pick a day and time, then you get a confirmation. You get a confirmation email when you schedule 24 hours in advance, and then you get a text message 1 hour in advance ahead of the appointment. So we made them do a little bit of work. Like you said, do a little bit of pre-qualifying, and still 6 out of 27 actually showed up. Would you care to share why the other 3 didn't shine in their interview? Yeah, so that's a good question. So we had to sit, 5 out of the 6 were qualified. Now in the application or in the description for the job post, in the job description, it was very clear that you need to have a valid driver's license. That's because they drive this position would be driving a company vehicle to do deliveries and that sort of thing. And one of the pre-qualifying questions is, do you have a valid driver's license? They clicked yes. And then in the interview, I said, okay, well, tell me about your driver's license. Clean history, is it a standard or a Class E? Just tell me a little bit about it. Well, I don't have it right now, but I am working to get it back. Well, you didn't qualify then. We need somebody with a valid driver's license, not someone who has had an issue with it. And I didn't get into why they didn't have it and how they were going about getting it back. But the moral of the story is they didn't have it. And for whatever reason, anyway, they didn't qualify. Now, so that brings us down to 5. So we hired 3 out of 5. And really, so we scored each interview on a scale of 1 to 10. It was typically in the meeting or in the interview was myself, my sister Sarah, who runs the residential division, and then Matt, who runs our fabrication shop and also our yard, because these 2 of the 3 of these positions would work under him. So we all scored 1 to 10, and then we all kind of at the end of it, we all powwowed. We started at our 10s. Actually, no one gets a 10, unless they just, I don't know. They would have to just come in and knock our socks off to get a 10. But anyway, we started at the top and worked our way down. When we saw kind of who got placed highest on everyone's list, and then we just started with the top 3. It was about a half hour, 45-minute discussion on the why we gave them a high mark or why we didn't give them a high mark. And then I tell you what, a lot of it was personality. It's also qualifications, but for these positions, they're more of an entry type position. It's keeping the yard organized. It's unloading supply trucks. It's reloading, crew trucks the night before the next job or, overnight. It's also delivering materials, construction panels, that sort of thing. So it's a fairly entry level position. So a lot of it just came down to personality and previous employment history, that sort of thing. So any of the 5 we would have hired. Like I said, one interview disqualified themselves by not having a valid driver's license. The rest of them were fully qualified. So then what we did was after we reached out to those 3, so we had 2 left. I actually sent a text message out to my business friends that are in like the construction trade. Said, hey, I've got a couple applicants here. They went through the interview. I'd hire them if I didn't hire these other 3 people. They're completely employable. Who needs helpers? And then I could forward their applications. Of course, so our process was after we made the decision, we called all of the interviews back, let them know either yay or nay. We made the decision on a Friday, and I told all the interviews during the interview, or as we were wrapping up the interview, that we were calling everyone back. I don't want to leave anyone hanging over a weekend, not knowing how it went or what they were going to do for the next week. Anyway, so when we called the 2 back that didn't, when we called the 2 back that qualified but weren't hired, we asked them, can we share your application or interview notes with other business owners? And of course, the answer was yes. So anyway, we sent their information out to the business owner network, and hopefully we'll get them placed as well. So, but great question. Care to share why the other 3 didn't shine? I mean, like I said, they all shine. They all shone in their interviews. I would have hired them all. If we had 5 positions, I would have hired all 5. As it was, technically we had 2 positions, but these 3 were just head and shoulders higher than the rest. So we went ahead and made an extra position, and we hired 3. So it all came for these positions. It all came down to personality. It really did. because this gets talked about a lot. We can teach you how to be a fence person, right, guy or gal. We can teach you how to pick inventory. We can teach you how to run a forklift, get you certified on the forklift. Like those are all teachable tasks or teachable skills. I can't teach you to be a good person. Just outside of my skill set on training on teaching somebody to be a good person. So we hire good people and then we train them into the position. Now, if they have experience already, that's a plus. One of the guys got hired, or he got high marks because he already had forklift certification and he used it pretty extensively in his previous employments. One of the other employees, team members, was he in his history he had a lot of lifting experience. So he worked for an armored car business. So he was used to being outside and he was used to carrying around heavy things. So he filled a position on our wood crew because those guys carry around heavy stuff all day. Great question. Key says, I'm thinking about getting into fence building after 20 years offshore with a thinky face, thinky emoji. Yeah, Kenny, not Roger. Kenny, it's a great industry to get into. It's really rewarding. At the end of the day, you can stand back and look and see exactly what you got done that day. It like I said, it's incredibly rewarding to be able to see what you've accomplished, and it keeps your feet on solid ground. So, I've got a couple buddies that work offshore or have worked offshore since we graduated, and that's kind of their thing. They like to keep their feet on solid ground. So, fencers definitely do that. All right. Sailing Doodles, yes. That's one of the sailing shows I watch is Sailing Doodles. I don't want to give away his. So if you guys like sailing at all or want to live vicariously through a sailing guy, which technically he doesn't sail anymore. He's got a motor boat, a motor yacht. But yeah, he does. He does get pretty lazy to sail with him. They all seem to fit a certain type. But yeah, no, he's a super cool guy, really chill, and just likes to sail around to a fun place, or now motor around to fun places throughout the Caribbean. So, yep, Sailing Dude is a great channel. I agree. Roger weighs in, says, Kenny, same here. I've been a pipe fitter for the last 23 years, installed fence professionally in 6 states, and worked for some big fence companies. Go for it, brother. Roger, that's a heck of a story. We should have you on sometime just to hear your story. I'd like to hear about that. Installed fence professionally 6 states and worked for some big fence companies. I mean, there's bound to be some good stories there. Keys has never been thought, but I built mine now, and all my family and friends want me to build one for them. That's generally the way it goes. So the biggest thing I can tell you, Kenny, is make sure your money's right. Right. Make sure you know your numbers. So if you didn't watch, we did a live, what was it, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago with Tom Reber. Tom's a big proponent of 50% gross profit. I am too, but Tom preaches it all the time. And 50% gross profit is pretty easy to get to. Figure up all your materials, all your labor. Now, if you're the only labor on the project, you still got to figure in labor. What would you have to pay someone to come work and build that fence? Your material and your labor, plus any additional overhead cost that would only be attributed to that job. So there's some guys that get really in the weeds on this and get down to fuel per project based on mileage. Anyway, all your associated costs for that project and then double them. So if it costs you $500 in materials and $300 in labor, those aren't great proportions. So these numbers are fictitious. Get you to $800. You have $800 in total cost. The retail price of that project is $1,600. As long as all of your numbers are in that $800, you got to be sure about that. And honestly, right now, you probably want to pad your material number, only because material pricing is still incredibly volatile. We're seeing it. We've been seeing it in the wood market for quite a while. Lately, we've been seeing it also in the aluminum and steel markets, the chain link, the ornamental aluminum, ornamental steel, that sort of thing. Everything's crazy right now. Demand's super high. I mean, this is building season. You know what I mean? Everyone says make hay when the sun shines. This is our sunny season, right? This is when we build fence. We also build it through the summer, but spring is when we build the most fence. So demand is high. Make sure your numbers are right. I don't want to see you become a statistic. There we go. Statistics say a new fence company typically lasts 3 to 5 years, and it takes you about that long to burn through whatever savings there were and have everyone just be so upset with you that you decide not to do fences anymore. And I don't want that for you. I would want better for you. Make sure you know your numbers. That's the reason most fence companies fail, is they simply don't know their numbers. They run out of money. They end up owing a lot of people a lot of money, go upside down, or they ride off into the sunset, never to be seen again. Finch King is with us. What's up, Dan Blanc? Saturdays with Joe. Dan is the other half of the... Dan, you're going to have to correct me on this. And Cannon, I'm sorry. I think it's Living the Fence Life. Is that right? Live show on Tuesday evenings. Dan's the second half of that. He runs a fence company out of Louisiana. What is up, Fence King? I agree, Kenny. I would love to hear Roger's story. Dan's just outside of New Orleans. Tell you what, there's bound to be some crazy stories down there. Actually, so Dan's pretty fortunate because the Fence Tech 2022 is going to be in New Orleans, and I am amped for that. That's going to be a lot of fun. Joshua Smith's with us. Welcome back. I was wondering what you think about using redwood for wood fence. It's a beautiful wood, but I don't see it used very often. Yeah, I think it's an incredible looking product. So there's several fence builders in California. There's one fairly large fence installer in California that also owns a mill. They build exclusively redwood fence. I want to say, no, I'm pretty sure they use redwood posts as well. I was going to say they use a lot of Postmaster steel posts, but I think they do offer a redwood post option as well. But they mill their own, so they have that ability. I think redwood is beautiful. If we could get it to the Midwest reasonably priced, we would offer it ourselves. The shipping is incredible. To get a truckload of anything, in this instance, it's truckload of redwood pickets from California to where I am here in Southwest Missouri. It's about $7,000. So that adds quite a bit per picket and per foot of fence built to the price. Plus, the redwood's going to be more expensive than cedar. And at this point, with the price of cedar the way it is right now, cedar's getting to be a hard sell. So, what I think about redwood, I think it is beautiful. If you have access to it, build with it. I think it sells itself. We used to use a product here in the Midwest, so it came up out of Arkansas. It's called Eastern Red Cedar. It's not actually a cedar. It's a juniper, and they're kind of like cousins. Anyway, Eastern Red Cedar, aromatic cedar. It's a real deep red. Actually, when you mill it, it starts purple, goes to like a deep red, then a brown. It is absolutely beautiful. The problem is there's no large mills that cut it. So it's a lot of smaller independent mills that cut it. We used it for many years, but the problem is they couldn't keep up with demand in the summertime. So, when it's summertime and we're building fence like crazy, kind of like how it is right now, we go through about a truckload of lumber every 2.5 to 3 weeks thereabouts. And they maxed out at a truckload a month. So we weren't able to keep things going with them. But the point being, the Eastern Red Cedar looks similar to the redwood. It is beautiful. If you have access to redwood, use it. I think it'll set you apart. Matt Schaefer, welcome back. Hi, sir. Matt, Grassland Solutions out of Minnesota. Welcome. Fish and picking, yeah, he's got a motorboat now. Joe, if you had a sailboat, what would you name it? Would it be a play on fencing? Probably. What would we name this sailboat? So I've got a friend whose dad had a sailboat, a very nice sailboat in the Caribbean, and it was yellow. His color was yellow, and they called it the Yellow Shoes, and everything about the ship was yellow. So I'd probably look into getting everything orange, obviously. I don't know. I've never named a boat or a ship before, so I know there's some rules and some guidelines to naming a boat. I've never named one. I don't know. But yeah, it'd probably be something that incorporates both the color orange and the fence life. Tyler K, welcome back. Tyler says, thoughts on Adjust-A-Gate steel gate kit. Okay. One guy's thoughts is if you can't build your gate out of steel, so we fabricate up our steel gates in-house using 1.5 by 1.5 galvanized squared tube. But if you can't do that, adjusted gate's probably a close. Now, it's just, it would be the next best thing, I guess. So you'd still build your frame out of wood, you still brace it correctly and all that, and then add the adjusted gate steel gate kit to it. Or I've seen guys add it to existing gates that are sagging and bring them back into true. Could work. I mean, it's like I said, it's the next best thing. The problem is you're still relying on wood posts. So you could get this gate perfect, but the posts are still wood. They're still going to twist. They're still going to move on you. It's still a natural product, but if you can't use steel posts with a steel gate, the adjusted gate is probably the next best thing. Kenny says, I'm thinking about working with a fence contractor to get myself started. Kenny, I think that is a great start. So I follow this guy, Gary Vaynerchuk, or Gary V, and that's kind of one of the things he says. Before you get into something, go work for someone for a year, someone that's already doing what you want to do, to learn the ropes. There's no sense reinventing the wheel with somebody else, and a lot of other people have already figured out their version of the wheel. That's, in all honesty, that's kind of what we're doing here, is I'm trying to share with other people our version of what that wheel looks like. But I think you're right. I think it would be a great idea to work for someone for a year or so to get a feel for exactly how that business runs, how they've developed their wheel. Because their wheel is probably a version of someone else's wheel, just tailor-made for their area. So I think it's a great idea. I think you can get great experience while getting paid for it. I think it's a great idea. And honestly, we have guys do that here. We have, and typically they come in as subcontractors. So they've got experience. They've got truck tools and that sort of thing. They work for a year or two, and then they go off on their own, and we wish them the best. Chase McFarland, welcome back from Lee County, Florida. Florida is well represented today. What is up with that? I mean, I can't blame you guys. If I had my druthers, I'd be somewhere south of here too. Southwest Missouri, I love it. All my family's here, but if I had to choose the second place, it'd be Florida. Florida, Texas, probably Florida. Although you guys got that Florida man running around, the one that's in all the stories. Florida man tries to fight off a gator with a golf club. Stuff like that. Travis, welcome back. Travis Ryan says, I did adjusted gate with my lifetime steel post. Perfect. Yeah. So the lifetime steel post is a great post. It's similar to the Postmaster post. I believe Lifetime's made by Gregory, but somebody correct me if I'm wrong with that. But the idea is it's a purpose-built steel post. It's not the round steel that we would typically use for like a chain link fence and then use brackets to attach the wood to the steel post. Kind of clunky. This is a design-built post. I think they're a great idea. Battery powered tools are wired. Battery powered every day. XAT2 _. Battery powered all day. I'm trying to think if we've got any. I don't know that we have any corded tools. Well, that's not true. We have mixers. So when we do pre-stain, we mix the stain comes in 55-gallon drums. We mix those up with mortar mixers. Those are corded tools. But I want to say those might be the only corded tools we have. So all of our crew trucks have cordless tools, wired into an inverter that's wired from the battery, so that we have so that the guys can be charging them while the truck's running down the road between jobs or something like that. So they're constantly charged. I like battery operated tools a lot. I really do. Like I said, I'm sure if we go into the tool crib, I'm sure there's some wired tools in there left over. We're like pack rats. We don't throw anything away. Well, it will sit here for a while, even after it's beyond its life. We're going to put it there because we want to be able to use it for parts. But yeah, I don't know of any tools beyond the mortar mixers that are wired. No, and certainly no tools that have a battery operated alternative. We are big fans of battery operated here. Joshua, you're very welcome. Cameron, you're absolutely right. Gary V is the man. If you guys are watching right now and you don't have Gary Vaynerchuk in your life, go find him. Gary V is exactly like Cameron spelled it, VEE. You search that anywhere and you will find this man. And he is, He's incredible. So I've listened to all his books. I was getting ready to say I've read all his books, but that's not true because I don't really read books that often. I listen to a lot of audiobooks while I'm driving to and from work. I've listened to his books. This guy's incredible. Start with Jab, 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 Right Hook is the name of one of his books. And I want to say maybe that might be the first one I got started with Gary on. And then I went through after that one, I went through and listened to all of them. Great guy. He reads his own audiobooks, which I think is really nice. Ask Mark how he knows. So now this, let's see. What is this in reference to? Sorry, guys, get behind on the comments a little bit. So I'm trying to connect the dots here. Roger, help me connect the dots. What are we asking Mark how he knows what he knows? Connect the dots for us a little bit on that one. Ronald, welcome back. Hey, Joe, back from South Mississippi, Gulf Coast. Welcome. Glad to have you back. A bunch of Gulf Coast. So we've got Houston, Texas, got a bunch in Florida. We got Dan in New Orleans. Now we've got Southern Mississippi. Kenny, you're very welcome. Ask all the questions you want. That's exactly what we're here for today. I'm going to talk about marketing stuff to fill the time in between comments and questions. But this show is all about answering your guys' questions and comments. Adam's got a great question. Pricing formula for staining, painting fences. So I was telling Kenny earlier. So basically, our method of pricing anything is to take our total cost of performing that work, labor, materials. If we're renting tools for that project, or if whatever cost can be attributed to that one project, we take those costs, double them, and we're at our price. Now, we've done it long enough to know, especially on staining, kind of where we are per square foot, so fence is typically built in lineal foot. Now, you'll maybe not get yourself in trouble, but one way that guys and gals find themselves in trouble is by billing out just per lineal foot, just because a lot of times that's not an accurate price, right? So figure out your total cost for the project, double them, and that's going to be your price. If you're at 50% gross profit, which we prefer. So I ran a report the other day. I believe last month is either 47 or 48% gross profit, so a little bit shy of 50. We had some bumps in the road come up while we're building fence. When we're building a fence, it took extra pickets than what we had accounted for, so we dipped down below 50%. But when you aim for 50 and you get 47 or 48, you're still in pretty good shape, especially when we're talking about a market that, the fencing industry as a whole, when you're talking to guys and gals that build fence, 33% seems to be the number gross profit that everyone winds up at. They take their total cost times 1.5, and that's their number. So rather than times 2 times 1.5, it gets them to 33% gross profit. There is a big difference between 33 and 47, 48, 50. And that big difference could be the difference between you surviving and thriving and not. Mark says, probably because I screwed it up to learn. Still don't know what we're talking about here, guys. Oh, Roger clarifies. Learning everything fence in regards to ask me how I know. I'm probably just slow this morning, guys. I'm trying to connect the dots here, but this might be, Roger, or Mark, is this an inside joke between you guys? Kind of like Kin's meat. Come on, guys. Heritage Fence Company. Hi, Joe. All the way from Pennsylvania. Welcome, Heritage Fence Company. Good to see you guys here. All right, Ronald started off saying, back from South Mississippi Gulf Coast. Ocean Springs, to be exact. I've still been grinding in the fencing biz. Still use your videos for reference and tips and info. Keep up the great content. You're more than welcome. This is why I do it. It's to help you guys out and maybe share a little bit of our knowledge, our methodology, or just really help you guys out. Kind of share our version of the wheel with you guys. Let's be honest. I wish there was somebody out there doing videos that I could watch and learn from. There's a handful of guys. I watch a lot of Mark's content. We might watch it again here in a little bit. They're at SWI. SWI has a great YouTube channel. Also, Mark's a part of a different channel called Successful Contractor. I think that is an incredible channel as well. We kind of have the same goal, right? Same thing with Dan and Cannon. We're trying to help elevate the fencing industry. I wish there was somebody doing this, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that we could have all got behind to help us be a few steps ahead now, right? The best time to start planting, the best time to plant a tree was 30 years ago, right? So the best time to have a channel was 10 years ago. But anyway, that's what I'm doing, is just try to help somebody, because I'm hoping that 10 years from now, we can help a few folks be a few steps ahead. Yep, Mark, I agree. 33% won't cut it. 40% is absolute minimum. I agree. So we shoot for 50. Like I said, last month we wound up at 47 and change, 47, 48%. I'd love to be at 50% or more. I mean, more is always great, because here's the thing. I mean, it helps us operate, right? And it also helps us take care of our team. Sean King, who said hi earlier, is really big on take care of your team plus one, right? And that's made possible by making sure that you charge enough to where you have some resources available to help out your team plus another. So whether that plus one is plus your community or plus the industry, whatever that plus one is, having the proper amount of funding makes all that possible. Mark goes on to say, I commonly say, ask me how I know, in reference to the fact that I have learned that lesson the hard way. I think that's okay. I'm just slow this morning, guys, and I'm going to go ahead and apologize for that. You're right. So Mark's usually saying, ask me how I know, because he's learned the hard way, and he's trying to help guys avoid the potholes in the road that he's hit. So, yeah, Mark, I think your channel's doing great. Here towards the end, like I said, I think we'll watch a few more of your videos. I want to introduce as many people as possible to your channel, because you're doing great work and you're doing it in a fun and educational way. Adam Sims, appreciate your help. Adam, I appreciate you showing up. I really do. Roger says, I have to say that you, Joe, and Mark have some great content. Roger, thank you. I appreciate you. Yeah, when I'm responding to comments on my channel, or when I'm commenting on Mark's channel or just other guys' channels, I always see Roger show up in the comments. Roger's a warrior. He's a YouTube warrior, and he's out there doing good work. Roger, thank you. I appreciate that for sure. Ronald asked, so did I hear you correctly? You just double your total cost of fence materials for labor charge? No. So what I'm saying is the total cost of doing the work. So, in this random example that is not based in reality, if my materials cost $500, my labor costs $300, all my associated costs associated with this, what it's going to cost me as a business to build this fence is $800 all in. I double that. So my price would be $1,600. No, you wouldn't double your material cost to get your labor price. I mean, everyone's labor cost is going to be different anyway. It just depends on what labor rates you negotiate with your team members, what taxes are applicable to you and your state, your situation. And then you're going to have, so overhead gets a little bit tricky in attributing it to job cost. So what amounts can directly be attributed to that job, right? All the associated costs, double them, and that gets to be your retail price. Like I said, in this example, $500 material, $300 labor gets you $800. You double it, you're at $1,600. Now, I'd also add in the cost of equipment, because on this job, we're going to be driving the truck and trailer to this job, which means we're going to have wear and tear on the truck and the trailer based on mileage. We're also going to have a digging machine. We use Toro Dingos. We're getting ready to upgrade them to Bobcat MT100s. We're going to have a piece of equipment. We're going to have hand tools. We're going to have, as we said earlier, we're going to have cordless tools on the job. All these tools cost something, right? So we also have an equipment charge. So, and again, random numbers. These numbers are not proportionally correct. They're not related to a project. But if we had $500 in material, $300 in labor, $100 in associated equipment costs. So now we're at $900. Now that's an $1,800 job. I do that math right? 5, 8, 9, $1,800 job. So it's easy math to do, guys. It really is. Maybe we could probably talk about this subject too, because this comes up occasionally in the Facebook groups. Charging for equipment, right? You know, a lot of guys say, well, I'm a professional builder, so I've got all my own equipment. I don't charge my clients for equipment. Well, that's great until the day that piece of equipment breaks down. So now you have to get it fixed, right? So that costs money. But B, you're likely going to have to go rent a piece of equipment to still complete that job. But now you don't have costs associated with the rental of that piece of equipment built into your project. There went your profit, or at least a decent portion of the profit for that job, depending on how big the job is. So we always build in a cost of equipment. Typically, it's the cost of renting the piece of equipment, or a proportion. You know, if it's a job that takes a third of a day, a third of the cost of renting that piece of equipment, the digger, and that sort of thing. We also have a cost for equipment. We know the truck's going to have to be replaced after 5 years, you know, whatever the replacement lifespan is of this truck. Same thing with the trailer. Going to have to get it serviced. Someone needs to pay for that. And it's a cost that we can attribute to that job. If we didn't have that job that day, those miles wouldn't have been driven on that truck. Miles wouldn't have been put on the trailer. The equipment wouldn't have come off the trailer. So really, really deep rabbit hole there, guys. But all of your costs, your labor, your material, your equipment cost, add those up, double those, you get your retail price of that fence. Roger that. Thanks for clarifying. I heard. Okay. Yeah, and that's fine. I just want to be clear because there's a lot of misconceptions, and this is why we had Tom on, or I had Tom on a couple of weeks ago. Is, you know, there's still a lot of misconceptions about the 50% gross profit. You know, because there's probably a lot of misconceptions on gross profit versus net profit in general. You know, so when we're talking about net profit, and I say, well, you know, depending on the year, depending on the craziness that happens, we tend to wind up between 12 and 15% net profit at the end of the year. And so I put that, so I used that figure. I tell you what I did. I used that figure in an ad we ran. And it was something I got really passionate about. It's something I heard a story a year ago, well, a little over a year ago. They hit home. It was about, it was pool safety. It was about a child that wandered their way into a pool and didn't make it. And, you know, the parent, it was a whole story, and you can imagine where that story went. But it hit hard. It hit me hard, and it tugged at my heart. And so I said, here, guys, so I made a video while I was at Social Media Marketing World in San Diego. And so that afternoon on break, I went outside and I created a video, and I said, guys, just heard a really, really sad story about a family losing a child. I'm a father. I have children. I don't want to lose a child due to pool safety or a lack of pool security. So I'm going to make you this deal. If you've got a pool that's not secured, I want to secure it, and I'll do it for 10% off. 10% is how much net profit we typically have left over in a project. I'll do it for 10% off. I won't make money on this after I pay expenses. I want to keep kids safe. If we save a kid, it's money well spent. Oh man. I had quite a few messages after that one. Basically everyone calling me a liar that we made way more than 10% on each project. And I quickly learned that there's a big misconception or a big misunderstanding on what the difference is between gross profit and net profit. Anyway, so wanted to clear that up. 50% gross profit is what we're shooting for. But I mean, like I said, here's the thing, guys, is it's what we shoot for. Do we always hit it? No. But the great thing about shooting for it is even if we wind up lower than our aim, we've aimed high enough that we're still in good shape. Like I said, we shot for 50 last month. We wound up at 47 or 48. Still in good condition, still well within where we need to be to keep the doors open, keep the lights on, keep building fence next month. So, but, you know, if we'd been aiming at 33%, which as Mark alluded to earlier is way out of line, and we came in lower than that, if we came in at 30%, now we'd be in some big trouble, right? We'd be hurting. Our net profit, we'd be negative on the net profit after we paid all the associated overhead costs, the utilities, the insurance, the everything else. We would have made no money on that project. So aim high enough that even if you miss, because we've all been on these projects, guys. I mean, you can You can pre-plan this project as much as you want. You can do site surveys. You can do anything you want. There's always seems to be one or two things that pop up that are a little bit different. They take a little bit extra time, a little bit extra material, whatever. You aim high enough, and when those hiccups show up, they're not really a big deal. No one's panicked about it. No one's worried about who's going to pay for this. We absorb it, move on, knowing that, okay, so rather than 50%, we made 47% on this project. We're still in good shape. Mr. or Miss Customer, we really appreciate the work. Is there anybody else you think of that's building a fence that we should know? We ask that all the time. So, and here's the thing too, is so us absorbing that cost. I tell you one thing we do is surprise and delight. Let me take a drink real quick. Tell you what, you get to talking for a while and your throat gets dry. Surprise and delight. So I empower my crew chiefs to spend up to $100 per project on something completely unrelated to fencing, but will have an impact on that yard. The reason we're building fence, 3 reasons: kids, pets, bad neighbors, typically. Sometimes we're just building someone's backyard oasis, right? So I tell this story, and now it's been several years ago now, but we started this probably 3 or 4 years ago. Surprise and delight. The $100, if it's within $100, I don't even need to know. Do it. Tell me about it later, just so I know what happened, and move on. So in this instance, we were replacing a 6-foot privacy fence around this lady's backyard. An older lady lived by herself, but you could tell this backyard is this lady's oasis, right? It is landscaped immaculately. It's got a really nice waterfall feature, which we all know are spendy. This lady has spent good money on this yard. This is her oasis. Well, one of my crew chiefs noticed that the paver was cracked. One of the pavers on her walkway through her garden was cracked. Now, we didn't crack it. We obviously didn't even drive. This was in the middle of her garden. We didn't drive through here. But one of my guys noticed on the way. So they had to run to Lowe's for some extra concrete. So while they're at Lowe's, so they took a picture of this paver. They knew they were going to Lowe's. While they're at Lowe's, they found this paver at, like I said, at Lowe's. It was whatever pavers cost, 10, 15, 20 bucks, whatever it was. They picked it up. They picked 2 of them up just in case they found another one. They went, replaced his paver, didn't say anything to the customer, didn't ask for a pat on the back. They just replaced it, moved on. And they told me about it. Scott told me, he's like, hey, this is what happened. We didn't do it, but this lady, this is her passion. This backyard's her passion. All right. So I knew about this. So a little bit of time went on, I don't know, a week or 2 weeks, something like that. And I get a message that this lady's reaching out. She wants to talk to someone immediately. Okay. I'm up on that one, because typically that means they got an issue, right? Let's solve it. So I call her up, and she said, young man, when your guys were out here, did they replace one of my walking stones or paver, whatever she called them? I said, oh, yeah. I see here in the job notes. So after this conversation with Scott, I put it in the job notes, because I know as soon as I go to sleep, I wake up in a whole new world the next day. It goes in the job notes. I say, oh, yeah, I see right here. Scott noticed it when he's building the fence. I mean, obviously, we didn't break. He didn't think we broke it, but we were at Lowe's anyway getting concrete. They had one that was an exact match. We went ahead and replaced it. Also, they had an extra one. They went ahead and put it behind your shed just in case this comes up again. And she said, do you know, I've been trying to get my kids to replace that, to come over and replace that forever. She said, I live by myself. I lost my husband. I can't lift this thing. But every day I see that when I'm walking to the waterfall. And it just bugs me every day. And then one day it was fixed. And I couldn't figure out. I called my kids, figured out if one of them had come by, and none of them had. And then I realized it happened when your guys were building the fence, right around the same time that fence got replaced. So I figured it had to be you. I'll go, yeah. Yep, we just went ahead and replaced it. It's like, well, what do I owe you for that? Nothing. No, it was just, we were already at Lowe's. We just picked it up. We replaced it. It was a really quick deal. It was while we were there. We just want to say thank you. It means a lot. Obviously your backyard means a lot to you. It means a lot to us that you trust us with this work. So it's a thank you. Do you know that however many years later, 2 or 3 years, she still is our biggest cheerleader? So, I mean, you guys have all seen in the neighborhood groups who builds fence. I'm looking for a recommendation on fence. This lady is in every one of those conversations, telling everyone that if they don't choose Ozark Fence, that they are missing out because Ozark Fence is kind and thoughtful. They take care of their customers and they happen to build great fence. She's got a fence from us and she's got a story to tell. Every single group. Guys, whatever that paver cost, $20. I don't think it's $20, but call it $20 plus some labor. Get crazy. Maybe attribute another $20 of labor to this, which is well outside of what it costs. $40 all in on this paver. Tell me we haven't got our money back in spades on that just because we implemented surprise and delight. Now, if we were rushing through every job, if we were in our conversation with Tom a couple weeks ago, he tells the story of contractors just rushing to get out of a job. As soon as the thing's close to getting done, they're throwing all the tools in the truck, they're slamming the door, they're peeling out down the road because they got to get to the next project. Well, what happens if you build an extra time on the project for your guys to do an extra walk around to see if there's anything else left, or just generally take their time to where they notice some things around them and you give them the ability to spend a couple extra bucks. For us, it's up to $100 on a job, just surprise and delight. Now, it doesn't happen on every job, right? So it averages out, but surprise and delight is huge, guys. It really is. And we probably couldn't do that if we were rushing on every job, if we didn't have the proper amount of profit built into the job to allow us, one, to take our time, but two, to be able to go buy that thing and spend a few minutes replacing this walking stone. We wouldn't have that cheerleader today. So I don't know how I know how we're going down the rabbit hole was charging what you're worth. Yeah, let's catch up on some conversations here. Cameron says, sold me 4 jobs this week using this method, and I'm looking forward to seeing the gross profit after we finish. I was hitting about 35 to 37% before last Sunday when I watched your video. Cameron, I can't wait to hear your story on this. Please follow up with us. Please let us know. So we do the same thing. So after every project, typically it's Friday, we do a residential operations meeting after work on Friday, after the crews come back on Friday. And then we just do, I don't know whether you call it a postmortem or what on your projects, but we run the numbers on the projects. Okay, what was budget on this project? What was actual? How many posts did we say we were going to need? How many did it actually need? Rails, budget versus actual, or proposed versus actual, pickets, nails, screws, concrete, labor. How much labor did we think we were going to use? How much did we actually use? What was our projected gross profit? What was our actual gross profit? And can we learn from this? Right. And typically that's what we're after. Is this isn't a session where, we really just beat somebody up on either, Scott used more material than was called for, or Sarah just didn't have it built in the project. This isn't a time to point fingers, right? This is just a time to learn from what happened. All right. So we used more pickets than we had expected. Did we add in the 10%? So on pickets, we take whatever total number of pickets we need, add 10%. That's how many the crew takes, because we all know when you're nailing them up, sometimes pickets split. Sometimes there's coals that didn't get caught when we're loading them, that sort of thing. You take 10% extra. That way you always bring back pickets. You don't have to make a trip or have someone else make a trip for a handful of pickets to wrap up a job. Anyway, follow-ups are huge. So Cameron, I'd love to hear after the projects get through, after you complete your post-project follow-up or post-mortem, whatever you want to call it. I'd like to hear how those projects went. I really would. Hypothetically speaking, with 12 to 15% net profit, what yearly revenue point are you basing that off of? Well, I mean, we typically do, it depends on the year, between 2.5 and 3 million a year. But I mean, every company is going to be different, right? So, and that's where we end up, is between 12 to 15%. I mean, some years, 08, 09, 2010, when we're dealing with the housing bubble, net profit was likely closer to 8 to 10%, right? We still had costs, but the revenue was suffering. And that's when we were in a different pricing model anyway. But 12 to 15% net profit, what yearly revenue point? 2.5 to 3 million a year, thereabouts. Roger says, it's amazing how people will complain about profit. Last time I checked, one does not hire ministry to perform a task. That's the thing is, we usually say, I'm not a not-for-profit, right? We're not a hospital. I'm not a school. I'm not a religious institution. We're a fence company. We do this for profit. Profit is our pat on the back when the job's done. It's our attaboy when we do everything just right. We know there's some profit at the end of this for us to do this job right. And I'm the same way, Roger. It's so confusing when profit's not bad. Profit is a reward, right? Fish and Pickens says, what if it's 100 for lunch, to improve the crew's morale? Absolutely. Yeah. So once a month, the crew goes to lunch. And it can be any time in the month. It can be, it's at the crew chief's discretion. They're pretty good at picking up on that. If it's a job that just really ground everyone into the dirt, hey, guys, let's go grab lunch. Or usually it's the next day. Hey, yesterday was a real grind, but you guys showed back up, ready to hit it again. We're going to go grab some lunch. Let's get out of here. Yeah, absolutely. It's 100. And this is kind of how we started off with internal clients and external clients. You got to take care of your clients. So if it's $100 spent on external clients, great. $100 spent on internal clients, fantastic. However that needs to be spent, it's always at the crew chief's discretion. Profit is the number one way to solve all your problems. Not the only way, but the number one way. That's absolutely right. So how does that saying go? It says, if you have a problem, but the problem can be solved by money, you don't have a problem, right? If you can pay something to make the problem go away, it's not a problem, or that's not your problem. The problem is, how do you find the money to make that thing go away? So that's absolutely true. Absolutely. So it's an incredible solution. And so here's the thing is, forget who, I was chatting with someone on Facebook about this. They were talking about, I don't want to get into the specifics of what we're talking about, but anyway, the thing was, making money isn't the destination, right? It's not, I made it. Money is simply a tool, right? Now, it's a fun tool. It's a tool that's cool to use, but it's a tool. It gets you somewhere else. You get more money so that you can get things. When people say, I want $1 million. Well, they don't really want $1 million. Like, what are you going to do with $1 million? You want what that $1 million can do for you. You want the things you can buy with the $1 million. You want the places you can go with the $1 million. You don't want the money. You want the things you can do with the money. The what does the money get you sort of thing. Absolutely right. Mark's, as always, hits the nail on the head. Profit is the number one way to solve all your problems. Edward Duffield, welcome back. I hope I didn't butcher Duffield. I hope I didn't butcher that name. Edward, welcome. Coastal North Carolina, building my own fence, learning from you, some others on the Facebook group. Absolutely, welcome. Ask away with all your questions. So Coastal North Carolina. So you're kind of near my stomping ground. So for the first 12 years of my life, I lived outside Raleigh, North Carolina, and Cary, North Carolina. But we tend to sneak over to the coast. Nice thing about Raleigh was it's kind of right in the middle between the coast and the mountains. So you could do coastal area one weekend. You could do mountains the other weekend. That was always kind of nice. Welcome, Edward. Like I said, ask all your questions. That's what we're here for today. That's a weird. Do I have a mouse in my pocket? I'm always saying we. That's what I'm here for today. Well, we, us in the chat too. There we go. Travis Ryan says, my brother-in-law started a fence business right after helping me with my fence. It's a common story. It really is. Someone that helps some other people with a fence, and then someone else needs help with a fence, and then on and on. And next thing you know, they're like, I need to do this full time. Like, why am I working my normal 8 to 4, 9 to 5 job when I could be doing this? As long as you know your numbers, it's a great trade to get into. It's been good for me and my family. It's been good for my team members' families. It's an incredible trade, and it's why I get fired up. There's some people out there like, well, it's just fence. Oh, you're not doing rocket science. It's just fence. It's not a trade. It is absolutely a trade. You know what I mean? It's a skill. Now, can unskilled labor perform this trade? Sure. I could probably figure out how to do electricity. That doesn't mean I'm wiring a house, right? We need a tradesman and a certified electrician to wire a house or to perform electrical tests because I don't want to get electrocuted. Same story. The electrician probably doesn't want to build their own fence because they want to hire a professional. It's a trade. It really is. But anyway, good luck to your brother-in-law. Let him know if he has any questions to bring them our way. Roger says that paper story is excellent. You couldn't buy that level of advertising. It's because that is who Ozark Fence is. That's right. So, Roger, it's a culture thing. You know what I mean? Our guys love being a part of that story. So Scott still tells that story. Scott was a crew chief. He's still our wood crew chief. He was a crew chief at that time, and he tells that story during interviews. Is like, here's the thing: we hire good people. Are you a good person? Let me tell you a story, and I want you to be on board with what we're doing here. Right? This is the kind of stuff we're doing. That paver had nothing to do with fence. It took time out of our day, which we could have been building fence, but we build extra time into our jobs. We build extra money into the job so that we can do stuff like that. Does that sound like something that you would be on board with? It's a culture thing. It absolutely is. And you're right. We couldn't buy that level of advertising. It's not for sale. Travis says, my brother-in-law helped me put up my fence, start a fencing business the next day. He used a brad nailer to put his pickets on. I was able to knock down all the pickets he did with a slight hit. Yeah. So brad nailer, probably not the best solution. Typically you see guys. All right. So this is going to be some guys use different ones. Roofing, coil nail guns typically. A lot of times guys will use roofing guns, that sort of thing, or siding a window gun. It's guys use different guns in different areas. I told him if he uses that for customers, he's going to get sued and he doesn't change his fastener, but he refuses to listen. What's the change he will get sued for it, or a chance he'll get sued for it? He's going to have to go back and do a lot of rework. I'm not a lawyer. I don't pretend to be. I don't want to get into will they, won't they, and what will they be sued for. But probably be doing a fair amount of rework. All right. There's a video on this channel, nails versus screws, because it is a major conversation at all times in all of the fence groups. Nails versus screws. We use ring shank nails. You can use them in a coil gun. They're very efficient. Can you use screws? Sure. They're just highly inefficient. And there's arguments either way. We use ring shank, hot dip galvanized ring shank nails. Now, the quality of the nail will make a difference. If you're using the cheapest galvanized nails you can find, they're going to leave streaks down your fence. We use Bostitch ring shank nails, and they don't leave streaks. Some people say they will. One guy's opinion, one guy's experience. If you buy the quality nails, they don't. Hot dip, galvanized ring shank nails. Chase McFarland says, I asked because we were asked. Okay, let me get back up here. I want to see what they're, all right. Okay, so Chase was asking, hypothetically, 12 to 15% net profit. I asked because we grow and get closer to the 8-figure company. I feel it's hard to maintain the 10% plus net profit margin. Looking at ways to keep that up and still be competitive in our market. Bring additional value. I mean, that's the thing, right? So part of the discussion when we're talking about 50% gross profit isn't bring the same amount of value that you were bringing at 40% and just bump up your prices. You need to figure out how to bring value commensurate with the 50% gross profit. What can you do additionally on every project to bring that much extra value? Hopefully bring more value. I mean, that's the golden secret here, folks. That is the tip, is figure out how you can bring 60% gross profit worth of value, but only charge 50% gross profit, right? Give them more value than what you're charging for, and you'll never want for work, right? So, and net profit, net profit, there's a lot there, right? You go through your P&L, you figure out what's here, what doesn't need to be here, or what doesn't need to be here at these levels, right? Can we renegotiate advertising? Can we renegotiate, whatever expenses are in your net profit or below your gross profit line? You got to figure out how to scale those down, or just simply make more money and bring up your net profit, right? Mark says, what is the limit any team member at the Ritz-Carlton can spend to make a customer happy? You can't have their policy if you're barely scraping by or losing money. That's absolutely right. So I've never stayed at the Ritz-Carlton. I'm no Mark Olson here, but I have stayed at the Four Seasons. And I tell you what, staying at the Four Seasons is an experience, right? So they're mad geniuses at this. When you take your kids, they roll out the red carpet for your kids, right? There's either cookies waiting, like warm cookies, or a piece of cheesecake or something with the child's name. So we went, this has been years ago. We went up to St. Louis, stayed at Four Seasons St. Louis, and they had warm cookies on a platter that said, "Welcome, Macy, my daughter," waiting for us when we got into the room. Now, you tell me, as a parent, that isn't cool, right? So, and there's stories. I'm sure Ritz Carlton has the same stories. There's stories out there of the Four Seasons just really, a kid forgot their stuffed animal, or that's their security animal. You know what I mean? That they sleep with at night, that sort of thing. And the staff goes and finds this thing and brings it to them, right? Or, I mean, you read these stories, you experience these stories everywhere, and they aren't able to do that if they don't have the money in the budget, right? That the surprise and delight, or whatever they call it, is absolutely in the budget. It is a line item. Is a line item. It's a line item in the budget. That's what I was trying to say. So absolutely agreed. See, Mark gets it. There you go. Fishing and Pickett says, I'm North OBX in Corova Beach. So a fellow North Carolinian. Edward says, about to build my first gate, sweating the details, treated on 4x4, 2x4 rails, face mounted, full panel treated pickets. All right. So, so as we talked about earlier, if you're stuck with wood posts and a wood frame, you're going to want to add support to that. So the Adjust-A-Gate system would be a good solution to making sure that gate stays square. We've moved away from using wood post exclusively. We haven't used a wood gate post in probably 3 or 4 years. Now we've also now gone to where we don't install wood posts at all, whether it's on the fence or the otherwise, just because supply and cost issues. Look at the Adjust-A-Gate or some system similar to the Adjust-A-Gate system to get a steel frame at least supporting that gate. I think you'll be happier with it. Jacob says, Joe, our team is getting jobs finished in about 65% of the time allotted for the job. We do not have a building yet, so I find myself finding things for them to do. They count on the company to keep them busy. Any tips? I mean, that's a scheduling issue, right? So, you're going to have to figure out. Now, you do not want them scheduled for anything above 90%. 75% is probably a good number. Just so that when you have hiccups, when you have roots or rocks or anything like that, that you're not overtime on a project. 65% is low, but you can do a couple things. It's scheduling, so you can try to figure out an extra job a week to put in there, or you can figure out if you want to take on smaller jobs. Repairs are usually a good filler for something like that. If you brought it 75, maybe 80%, 75% is a pretty good place to be at. If they have scheduled work for 75% of their available hours, it's probably a good number. So do not have a building yet. So I find myself finding things for them to do, which is common. I mean, even with the building, we find things for our guys to do. Rainy days, we have, learning opportunities in the conference room, or we have cleaning and organizing, whatever. I mean, just because we have a building, we can find stuff for them to do. But even without a building, you can find things for them to do. I wouldn't get crazy with scheduling. Like I said, if you figure out how to find some extra work, if you find an extra 10%, you get up to 75%, 80 at the most, probably. I think you'll be better. But I mean, you're in the wheelhouse for sure. But I get the point that the guys count on the company to keep them busy. You don't want to lose good team members. So yeah, fine. Typically, guys use repair work to fill in the time. And I've said this for a while. If you had a company that solely focused on repairs, I think you'd kill it. I really do. So this time of year in the summertime, we're so crazy with full size jobs, we don't take on repair work. So we usually sub that out, or we don't sub it out. We refer that out. And I tell each one of these guys, like, listen, if you can figure out a way to make the repair business model work, you will have all the work you ever want. Go into 3 or 4 other fence companies and say, hey, I love repair work. I would love to take all your referral work, or if you want to sub it, I'd be fine with doing that too. I love repairs, and you will have all the work you could ever want for sure. Mark says, Edward Duffield, we have a video on our SWI Fence channel that could help you. You know what? Let's watch it. Let's figure. All right, guys, bear with me because, again, technology. All right, how are we going to do this? We need to. Nope. There I am. Okay. So we are going to find Mark's gate video. So we're going to go to YouTube. Or search SWI Fence. Click on the channel. It should say subscribe next to the channel. If not, go ahead and click that subscribe button. Go videos. All right. All right. Thank you for bearing with me, folks, as I try to figure out this. Nope, that isn't it. There we go. All right. Take down Mark's comment real quick. We're going to watch the ad so that Mark's channel gets the credit for that.
The real question is, what can't you fit in it?
Pack up and pedal out with 2 liters of storage, minus the sweaty back.
All right, I hope you guys can hear this.
All I have is a sandwich and a tube.
Oh, I mean, I'm still going. Yeah, so you can basically fit anything you need for a long
Let me know if you guys
ride.
can hear this. All right.
Our proven installation process ensures your gutters are in tip-top shape and prepped to protect your home. Step 1, we clean your gutters. Step 2, we realign and seal your gutters. Step 3, we install leaf filter, a permanent solution to end clogged gutters. Get your free estimate today.
Class is in session, and today what we're going to teach Dan here, young Padawan Dan, is going to learn how to build cedar gates, because it came to my attention that Dan knows how to build cedar gates, and he did a video on this, and I watched it, and I was like, he is not using all the secrets and tricks of our trade. So what I want to do is I want to teach young Padawan Dan here how to build a gate using the most...
All right. I love the snacks here. This is why Mark's videos are the greatest. So they're educational, but they're also entertaining.
Effective methods possible so that it's as simple as it can possibly be. Because I've watched tons of people over the years really struggle with gates. And I remember the very first gate I built, cedar gate, and I built it in somebody's driveway. And then I went to hang it and I'm like, now why don't all these boards line up? They were all staggered, and it's because I built it square, and we ended up having a racked gate or needing a rack gate, and everything needed to be at an angle. So whether it's square or whether it needs to be at an angle, you can make all your boards line up, and you can make it fit perfectly every time with very little effort using the secrets we're going to teach you right now.
Expect the juice pouch.
What?
Can we try it now? I'm excited. Let's go.
Enough screwing around, Dan. So let's talk about some unique problems that we have because we only...
I like that there was an assistant that took the table away too. Very good attention to detail here.
Offer Postmaster posts. We have steel here, and that can create some unique problems. And one of the questions we get all the time is, do I need to do anything special to be able to build a gate with a Postmaster post? And the answer is only ever so slightly. We can still use the same exact post, and I've heard other people say that they like to take 2 of these Postmaster posts and double them up, but we haven't found that that's necessary.
Yeah. So the reason, and I'm not correcting Mark, dude. The reason that people say that is because that's the method that Postmaster shows. You know what I mean? And I don't understand it either, but they show butting 2 of them up together and like welding them or attaching them with bolts or something. Yeah, I never have really understood that idea.
99.9% of the time, your gate's closed and all the strength is this way in the fence. And so we don't need to worry so much unless we had a really, really heavy gate or something like that. In which case, we do have some special posts that we can sell you made specifically for gates, or you can double these up, run them back to back, and weld them together on your job site. But what we found is homeowners doing their own fences don't oftentimes also have welders. No need to do anything special as long as you're not going over maybe 5 feet or so. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to need to cut a piece of wood, a 2x4, to fit in this and fill that gap. The only reason we're doing that is that our hinges don't roll here. All it's doing is filling that gap so that we get a good level surface to build off of. And once we've done that, we'll screw that up here. No special tools needed. All we did was we took a crayon, held this up here, drew a line all the way down the board, and then we're going to take a skill saw that's quite conveniently missing some teeth because we've cut some things that we probably shouldn't over the years, and we're just going to rip this thing down. So even a skill saw that's missing a couple teeth can still cut. Good? Good. This thing will not be bearing any weight. It is simply a gap filler. And you can see on this post where we've already installed our gap filler for the latch side. So we did another gate video on this opening, and we've just kind of peeled it back so you can see everything that's going on. I don't have a tape measure either. Anybody got a tape measure here? Oh, look at that. Was it 6 inches? Down a quarter. Right there. Okay, Andrew. For those of you that haven't seen some of the other videos on our cedar fences, what we're using now is 1 7/8 ring shank nails. Those are stainless steel, and that is so that we don't get any of that bleeding down our cedar pickets. Yeah. Thank you. Up a half inch. Up an eighth. Right there. I have 51.5 there, and I like to measure everywhere we're going to put a rail. So that one's 51.5. Yeah, that's we get about a 1/16. That's 5/8. We're going to do what we call build in place. So we're going to build this gate exactly where it's at right now. So 51.5.
Hold on. I want to measure them out since you got to measure.
Okay, go for it. Okay. Do it. There's a square. And what I like to do when I'm doing this is I like to have my gloves on, and then I like to hold it like this, and then pretty much exactly like this. That ensures that you'll have the maximum amount of fun. And we're all about having fun. So if you go like this,
Having fun.
that works really well because you're also supporting the wood. Plus, the last thing you would want to do is cut into this grass down here. No, I'm kidding. That's not what we want to do. It's also be really good if you just start right back here. All right. So we have that right at the top of the post. We have that right at the top of the post because that should be our top rail, right? Andrew? So what he's doing is just toenailing those in there. That'll just hold those in place.
This is a question I've had for a while. Is it toenailing if you're using a screw? I don't know. I mean, we say toenailing too, but I thought about that the other day. Like, is it toenail? We're not using a net. Meh. Anyway, dumb things my mind thinks about.
For a blade that's missing like half of its teeth, that thing's still doing pretty good. Ooh, this tape measure's nice. 26.5. Is that what you got? Is that what you're doing between rails? Yeah, this tape measure sucks. There you go. 26 5/8. And then 27.5. A little off. Okay. 26 5/8. Let's play 65/8 and 54. Oh, and now I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, well, that's not a very good fit, Mr. Olson. It isn't going to matter. When we get all said and done, that is not going to matter because we need a gap there anyhow. And you'll see why. Are these the better rails or the not as good rails? These are the better rails. You used our $10 ones for a test? Wow, you guys are really worth it. They use the good.
Yeah, so Mark just had the comment that Mr. Fence Tools has a rail runner that would make this easier. Yeah, I'm excited to see when Sean comes out with the tool for Postmasters. I am very interested in that tool for sure.
Good rails on you. Oh, you already got it.
So I'll tell you what our process is we've got a jig set up out of 1.5 inch square, just because that's what we make our gate frames out of, where you can hang it on the top rail, and then it has stub outs at your correct height for your mid rail and your bottom rail. We've got those for 4 foot, 6 foot, and 8 foot fence. Makes life a little easier, but you got to have your top rail set. So the Mr. Fence Tool version, the one that for the wood post he has right now, you just hang it on your post. As long as your posts are cut or set to height being preferred, you run all your rails on it. So his is an improvement on ours. Like I said, ours you have to hang it on that top rail. So typically our process is we run out the top rails, make sure the flow's right, and then if we hang this tool, run it down the rails, all the rails are always set at the same height or set correctly. But Sean's tool would certainly be an improvement for sure.
Okay, you ready? This is where it gets a little tricky. So we're going to build our brace. Or we're going to hinge off of this post so the brace always goes up away from your hinges. That's very critical.
So I like that Mark's doing it this way, because if you think about it, all you're doing is you're transferring the weight from the top down to your hinge, right? And it's pressing down. You're not relying on fasteners to hold it all together. Sometimes you see guys brace from the top down, which is how you would do it on a chain link gate, right, with truss rods and tighteners, but they try to do that on wood. The problem is then you're relying on your fasteners to hold. Like I said, Mark's got the right idea. You always start from your bottom hinge and brace up to the top outside corner of your gates.
No, we don't want it all the way to the end because we're going to end up cutting that off, right? Ready? You have a 1/2 inch? Okay. Now, I don't like to go and figure out this angle, so that's the way I like to do the brace. When we're building a gate, we don't want this angle to fall below 45 degrees. Anytime we fall below 45 degrees, we need to think about a different way to brace it. We can do 2 diagonals, but we can't ever exceed 45 degrees. Basically, what I want to see is I want to see an angle that's like that. If I got down here to where my angle was like that, that's too great. So the angle right down here is over 45 degrees. I can't fall more than 45 degrees this way. And you could also use this square to find out. This is at 45 degrees exactly, so I can use that. And if my bracing, as long as my bracing does not fall down, if it falls down here, I've exceeded 45 degrees. As long as it's anywhere up here, then I'm less than 45 degrees. See that? Less than 45 degrees. Anytime you exceed that, then instead of have a compression brace, you actually have a tension brace, and it's not doing its job. It needs to be able to support that weight at the end of the gate. And you'll have to tell me where you want it. It should be somewhere right in there, huh? Because we marked that right there, we can see exactly where the trail needs to line up, but it should be about a 1/2 inch in there, was my intended method. Okay. We don't have a bump board, so this is what we're going to use for now. You want to just hold that up there. So normally what I'd like to use is some sort of a bump board, and there's a product out there called a straightaway. Look it up. We'll
There
provide
you
you with
go.
a link to that down below. And they work really good for getting all your picket tops so you don't have to use a string or anything. Give the gap. We'll figure it out.
Good call, Mark. The music gets me every
We
time.
can do one and a really narrow picket here, or we can do two smallish. Too smallish. It's kind of the way I lean. It's a little bit more work, but I think it looks better. It blends a little bit better if whatever you're doing is not right on the ends. So that's typically the way we do it.
3 9/16, huh?
So it's worth noting that normally we would have a table saw here and we'd just rip all these, but that's out on a job site, and so we can't shut down production for that. But it would be typically, so we wouldn't even be using a skill saw. We'd be using a compound miter saw and a table saw. So this is slowing that process down just a little bit. You can easily take a piece of scrap and lay it over your picket that you cut to transfer that dog ear from the old picket to your new picket. If they're a little tight, you can peek them like this and wedge them in there. You got to be able to.
The theory is if I miss any, Andrew's going to scream because I'm going to hit him.
Focus, you squirrel.
I got so much going on right now.
This spacing was just set random. It's not a 48-inch gate. It's not a 36-inch gate. It was 51.5 inches. And so when you have some random spacing, which is usually what we do because we just set our post randomly wherever the center of the hole is, knowing that it's going to be about 48 inches. Inevitably, what we're going to end up with, even if it was 48 inches, is we end up needing to trim a picket. Now, we had the option of we could have used a full picket and a really narrow picket, one that's like that wide, and it would have looked really awkward because we wouldn't have had our dog ears here. It's a lot easier to hide that picket and make it look good by cutting two of them down rather than one. That took us a little bit longer. In the overall scheme of things, it looks a lot better. So we trimmed two pickets to fit this 7 1/8 inch gap instead of just cutting one picket that was like 1.5 inches wide. Now what we're going to do is we're going to show you the easiest way to hang the gate. So the gate's already in the opening. It's already built all the way across the opening. All the tops line up. And if you come around the back, if we had rails on both sides, what you would see is you would see all of our rails lining up exactly like they should, even if we were on a slope. Because I didn't have to do any special calculations to figure that out. Which leads me to another thing. We didn't talk about if this is on a slope, this is a pretty square gate, but we might have had to hold our 2x4s across here and then mark them to cut them at an angle. And we didn't have to do that here because it was still pretty square. If you were going down a pretty steep hill, you would need to cut that at an angle. The other thing to think about if you're going to go down the hill is you always want to hinge your gate off the low post. Let's say we had a hill and now all of a sudden our 2x4s are running like this. What we would want to do is we would want to hinge the gate off of this post, no matter what, because as that gate opens, it's going to get further away from the ground. Now, if you hinge it off of this post and our hill's going like this, the minute you try and open that gate even a little bit, it's going to run into that hill and you won't be able to open the gate.
I just noticed Mark's wearing tennis shoes instead of flip flops. Really, Mark?
So you always have to hinge off of the low post. Like I say, again, because this is flat or fairly flat, we're going to hinge it off this. And we probably will need to trim just a teeny bit off of these just to make that gate swing, just because we're so close to the ground there. Not a big deal. When we get the gate cut for you, we'll just trim an inch off the whole bottom and call it good. Now we have our gate here. And you know what we could do is we could now take all of our screws out and we could have our gate flopping around in the wind and doing all sorts of funny things, couldn't we? But the easier way to do that is, while it's still secured to the fence, we'll just put our hinges on right now. But what you'll see, so we'll center this right on our gap right here. And what I would suggest is probably about 1/4 inch here. And then your gap on the other end needs to be 1/2 inch to maybe 5/8 of an inch to allow enough room for your latch. 1/4 to 3/8 here, 1/2 inch to 5/8 down on your latch end, and that should give you enough gap. So, and then we're just going to line this thing up just like that.
So that's a good point, that they pre-drilled the holes before they ran lags in. It's one of the harder lessons I learned as a kid because I thought I knew more than my dad did. And he liked to pre-drill, and I thought that was senseless and it wasted time. And I've split a ton of pickets. So, now that I've grown up and I've got kids of my own, I've decided that pre-drilling is the proper way of doing that.
Yeah, that one's good. All these are 1/2 inch socket. So these holes right here, because we have the Postmaster, these holes are going through steel. Now that's a good thing for you as well because it gives you extra security for a latch. So we're not just counting on the threads. This thing's going to be drilled all the way through that Postmaster post to the other side, and then we'll put a carriage bolt in it, which we sell. We've got black carriage bolts so that it can all look good and match up. And if you really wanted to, you can put carriage bolts on all of these. You just have to order those separately. And he angled that bolt. If you'll see, he kind of angled that over just so he could make sure he hits that Postmaster post. If you're ordering stuff from us and you know you're going to have Postmaster posts and you're going to put these kind of hinges on, make sure that you also get some 5/16 by 1.25 bolts for these. You'll need a minimum of 3. You just can't get it is to drill a brand new hole and not use that hole. Just come over to where you're in the middle of this post right here. What he's talking about is not using this hole and then drilling your hole just a little bit further back, like right in here. If that hole was halfway between that hole and that, it'd be perfect right there for a Postmaster. The new Postmasters are a little bit different size, so that might not be as big of a conflict either. This is actually the old version 1 of the Postmaster, so the version 2 is slightly different.
Yes, I bet it would work better on the Postmaster Plus because that hat, that's what is that hat's a bit wide. I'll say a bit wider. So I bet it does work better on the Postmaster Plus. You just got more room inside that hat.
So you can see this is the new Postmaster. That's the original. You can see that they're a little bit wider. They've got a wider flange on them, and they're a little wider here. So now that we've got our hinges on here, we can take all these screws out, and this gate should swing. And we didn't have to hold the gate exactly perfect. Everything should just line up exactly the way we want it. So we've got 2 things we're going to do now. Because this gate was dragging on the ground, we're going to go ahead and quickly trim a little bit off. If you're really tight to the ground and your gate doesn't swing freely, you may have to trim just a little bit off to make your gate just a touch shorter. Good? Yep. So again, we'd want a 1/2 inch clearance on this end and about 3/8 on that end, 1/2 to 5/8 and then 1/4 to 3/8 on that end. Okay, we're ready. If this would have had all the clearance, I could have taken a reciprocating saw and that would have been what I used to do this. I wouldn't have even unhung the gate. The only reason I did is because we needed to trim a little bit off the bottom. So we were able to show you how we do that as well. And right now I need to go put out somebody else's fire because I'm on the fire department and the fire whistle's going off. So this 2x4 that goes, your middle 2x4, we're going to put a latch in it. So it is very important that we put the latch, the catch, at the center of that 2x4. This piece is going to get attached to the gate. This is going to lock into that. We're going to screw into the gate here, but we need some meat and potatoes behind that. See, so we want to go right into that rail. We want to screw right into that rail. That's my meat and potatoes. So we're going to drill through the Postmaster again, and we are going to use the black 5/16 by 2.25 carriage bolts. Okay, so I have just a piece of scrap to show you something here, and because I'm telling you that we're going to use a carriage bolt to carriage this latch into the Postmaster post. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. If you would have just used a wider piece of 2x4, you wouldn't have any of this problem. You are absolutely correct, but if you don't rip that 2x4 down ultimately what you're going to have is you're going to have that big of a piece of nailing point. So you're going to have all this meat, that 2 inches, 2.5 inches just hanging out by itself. Over time, it's going to naturally want to kind of split there because there's nothing supporting it. So that is the reason that we did what we did, and that is the reason that we're doing what we're doing right now. So all we did there was we just drilled out the hole so that the bolt sits nice and pretty. The reveal is beautiful. Just make sure that that looks nice and level across here. And you can put that handle on there however you want. You can do just like I did. You can take the handle and you can put it perfectly over that. It just 100% depends on how you frame out that backside. If you don't have a nailer back there to receive that lag bolt, then you're going to have to do it the way that I just did it. So this is everything that we've learned today. We thank you. Wait, hold on. So now that we are done and we put the latch on, put the handle on, we got the gate hung, we showed you how to do all that cool, awesome stuff. The only thing we got to do now is put on the anti-sag cable. That is in a different video. So this is us just saying we're done, showing you how we do. And stay tuned for next time when we show you how we do again. But I want to leave you with this. Always ask yourself if the juice is worth the squeeze. You have a good dang day. After you get all those steps done, you put all your tools away, you clean up, then you just start walking through that gate. You can use that gate daily. In and out, out and in and out. Through the gate. That's it.
There you go. So hope that video helped. I think Mark did a
Hungry for new backlinks for your website?
There we go. I don't need new backlinks for my website. Yeah. So I think Mark did a great job in explaining how they build gates with wood frames. So we haven't built gates with wood frames for several years. We fabricate our own steel gate frames. So Mark, I appreciate you creating that video. Let's go back up, start at the top of the comments, make sure we get them all. Ed Duffield knows what's up because he already follows the SWI channel. Fishing and picking is in real estate facility maintenance. All right, so Mark clarified. He's not stayed at the Ritz yet. The Trump hotels are first class too, though. It's an entire experience. And see, here's the thing. The one thing, so this is getting back to talking about, surprise and delight. Right. So building that into your process so that you'll start creating stories. Like Mark's never even stayed at a Ritz-Carlton hotel and knows exactly what the experience is going to be like. Same thing with the Trump hotels. Same thing with Four Seasons. You know exactly what the experience is going to be like. There's going to be some portion of surprise and delight during the stay. You go there partially because of that. Let me tell you, when we go to St. Louis, we now have to stay at the Four Seasons because my daughter has been trained that if she goes there, she will get cookies and they will write her name on the plate in chocolate. What did that cost them? What did the cookies and the plate and the labor to bring it up cost? Not much, I'd bet, but it makes a massive impact. And now my children make the lodging decisions for our family. Derek Helm says, I always swing my gates off 2 metal posts. Same thing, Derek. I do the same thing. So we use 2.5-inch Schedule 40 or CS 40. Or ours are CS 40. They can be SS 40, WS 40, WP 40. Everyone has their own codes for these, right? CS 40 is what we use just because that's the supplier that it comes from. Yeah. So steel posts, we use Shark hardware, Shark hinges, and Shark latches that bolt directly to the 2.5-inch. and bolt directly to our square framed gates. But Mark's video, a ton of guys build gates with wood frames, which is why we watch Mark's video. I think he did a great job explaining exactly how they do it. I would, if I was building wood gates, I would save that. Like I would make that video a favorite. That way I could go back and reference it as I'm building gates. Be a good idea. Ed Duffield says, trying to figure out adjust a gate when I have face mounted rails. Seems like it's designed for flush mounted rails. Okay. So full transparency, I've never used the adjust a gate. So I can't picture what the problem is with face mounted rails versus flush mounted rails. Hey, Mark, do you have a video on the adjust a gates? Question mark. Well, Mark, we were wanting to give you like the 9 cents per video ad revenue. It's probably not even 9 cents per ad revenue or per ad watched. It's ridiculously low, but you got the ad revenue coming to you, buddy. Chris Steele says, I love that way to fill the gap. Works perfect. Agreed. This is kind of like Dan's thing, I've noticed in your videos. Dan likes to be a photo bomber. Greg Kaysen is in the Gulf Coast too, up in McHenry. Welcome, Greg. Actually, we've already said welcome, Greg, so, you know. Ed Duffield says he's seeing it both ways. Cut the brace to fit around the center rail or cut the center rail to fit around the brace. Seems like cutting the rail makes more structural sense. The horizontal rail, the mid rail. Yeah, I can see that. That way you keep your compression brace solid from the top of the outside corner to the bottom of the inside corner. It transfers all of that compression down to the hinge. I can see that because then you're not relying on fasteners. So then you got your fasteners into your mid rail, into a fastener, so you're not relying on the fasteners. I can see that. Yeah. So Mark mentioned, I just saw the new way to do this, nailing 2 boards together and ripping them together. I'm going to try that. I agree. So I saw that it was in one of the Facebook groups. I'm interested to give that a shot. So we run into this occasionally on fences too, right? So no matter how you lay out this fence, it seems like at the end of the fence, at the end of each section, there's typically a gap, right? There's some sort of remainder after you put in your last picket. So, and we talked about this last week. We like to step back, 2, 3, 4 pickets, rip a couple pickets down. That way it makes it look somewhat more uniform. But yeah, so right after that conversation, so this past week is when I saw that in the Facebook group. We're going to have to try it and probably make a video out of it. Makito says, I built my gate at 37.5 inches. No need to rip a picket. There you go. Sean King says, ripping both pickets at the same time is an awesome way to do this quickly and accurately and efficiently. If nothing else, we're trying to figure out how to do this. Maintain the same quality while increasing efficiencies. Yep, the center rail is just a nailer. Hey guys, this is the important part, right? So we're all always learning. The day you stop learning is the day you start falling behind. I'm not sitting here saying I know it all. I know 1% of everything, like maybe 1%. But we're always learning, right? And sharing our experiences so that we can all sit here and learn this thing together. Dick, I don't know what we're doing here. Nanu. Okay. Ed says, this video is a game changer for me. I will be outside soon. Again, Ed, I would favorite this or bookmark that video somehow. That way you can go back and reference it. I think he covered a lot in that video, and I think it's all worthwhile knowing. How did you miss my footwear? That's listen, I know. All right. I got wrapped up in this gate thing. I was admiring the work. I was admiring your feet. I'm sorry. Okay? I said it. I'm sorry. I will check your footwear from now on prior to me actually paying attention to what's going on with the video. Sean says, hey, Mark, slide your hinge over away from the seam in the gate, the gap in the gate to the right. In this case, 1/2 inch. It will swing perfectly, and your bolt will be in the center of the Postmaster. Yeah, that probably makes sense. So the bolt, the pivot on the hinge doesn't necessarily need to be centered in the gap, right? So because we're swinging it out, we can't swing in. Yeah. Sean, that makes perfect sense. Guys, Sean's got a great channel too, Mr. Fence. Let's search this. Let's see. I want to get it right. Search in YouTube, Mr. Fence. That's literally what the channel is. The channel is Mr. So MR period space Fence, Mr. Fence. He's got a lot of good videos in there. So he's talking about using the straightaway. He's talking about what to do with I like this video. So it is what's next with the purchase of my vinyl fence. This is, that video concept is such a great idea. And it's something that we're actively working to create storyboards for and do some videos on, basically documenting the customer experience so the customer knows what to expect before it even comes up, right? I think that's huge. Ed notices school desk work surface. I'm retired fire myself. Those school desks are just, those things are built like tanks. I mean, seriously, like whenever you can find one, pick one up. I don't know that they can actually be destroyed. Roger is correct. Mr. Fence is in the house. Welcome, Sean. Yeah, so Mark, I agree. So Mark said, I'm so stuck in the mindset that the pivot needs to be on the seam. Yeah, I mean, it's natural to think that the hinge pivot needs to be centered in the gap. But when I sat and thought about it after Sean's comment, it doesn't really need to be centered in the gap, right? Because we're opening this gate out. So stands to reason, yeah, you move it in 1/2 inch, put that bolt in the center of the Postmaster post. You wouldn't have usability issues. It would still install the same way. So absolutely. Oh, here we go. YouTube, Mr. Fence Academy. We have a wood frame gate design very similar, but with treated lumber prone to warping. So we have a solution for that using just treated lumber. Well, guess what, Sean? Give me a quick second. Get caught up on the comments, and we're going to watch your gate solution. Greg Kaysen said, I tried the method you're talking about last week, and it's a game changer. There you go, Greg. I saw the RIP method on Facebook. Try it last week. Okay. Gotcha. The RIP method. So I am very interested in that because as soon as it's one of those ideas, I wouldn't have come up with it in 100 years, I bet. But as soon as you watch it, you're like, yep, that's exactly what I need to be doing with my life. Home renovation, like to rip 4 or 5 pickets. Okay. Just subscribed at Sean King. All right. So let me say this, Ray. I wasn't, your comment was valid. I have an issue with the home renovation DIY channel in general. Anyway. Well, we'll talk about it. So it's not ongoing legal or anything like that. So we did a reaction video similar to the reaction we just did with Mark's video, right? Where we watch it and pause it and talk about it. We all learn from it. So I did a reaction video with Home Renovation DIY's video on him building a horizontal board-on-board fence kind of using the camo screw system. And that video did very well. Yeah, there's no way about it. When you're looking at our analytics, our channel's doing well, and then it spikes, it goes to the moon. And at that point, Home Renovation DIY filed, let me get this right, a DMCA takedown, Digital Millennial Copyright Act takedown notice, saying that we used copyrighted material in a way that was not authorized. And YouTube legally has to remove that video within 24 hours of receiving the notice. So they did. The problem is the Home Renovision DIY did not do a fair use analysis. If they had done a fair use analysis, they would have realized that the video was made within the guidelines of the Fair Use Amendment to the DMCA. And the fair use, it basically says if you're using it for educational content, if you're using it for newsworthiness, there's a few stipulations in there. But one of them is if it's used for commentary. And when we do the reviews, we do it with running commentary throughout. We pause the video, we talk about it. We watch more video, pause the video, we talk about it. We learn from it. So it's done using the commentary portion of the Fair Use Amendment. It was made within the Fair Use guidelines. So we had to then issue a legal document, basically a legal response to YouTube, saying that it was created using the Fair Use guidelines, the Fair Use Amendment, and then DIY Renovision or Home Renovision DIY had 14 days to respond. Of course, they didn't respond because it was created using the fair use. What they did was they shut the video down for 14 days, knowing that it killed the video in the analytics. So what it was doing 10 or 20,000 views a day, now it does 200 or 300 views a day. And it did exactly what they were trying to do. So Home Renovision DIY is a massive channel. They have a million viewers, multiple million viewers, I'm sure. They've got a lot of viewers. It's a huge channel. It's so for our channel of 23,000 viewers to pose, or 23,000 subscribers to pose any sort of threat to the folks over at Home Renovision DIY is pretty laughable, right? But anyway, so Ray, I wanted to explain that because it seems like I skipped over your comment. I didn't. I think it's great. I think ripping multiple boards is probably even a better idea because it helps everything blend in, right? So I didn't want you to think I was skipping over your comment. Oh, okay. Just give him credit. Not my idea. Absolutely. Completely understood. All right. So we are going to YouTube Mr. Fence Academy. So hold one. Mr. Fence Academy. All right, here we go. I'm guessing this is the strong. Yeah, this is it. Strong gate. I know this is it because it has the thumbnail was you swinging on the gate. So yes, that is absolutely the one we're looking for. All right, so let's figure out how we did this before. We did this, and then this. There we go. Guys, I tell you what, we're figuring out this technology business. So let's see how Sean builds a wood gate out of treated pine. So it's important to note that in Mark's video, he's using cedar pickets, cedar rails. But obviously, there are still a lot of markets that prefer using treated pine rails and treated pine pickets, such as Florida. And so we'll see Sean's solution. This was actually, he might say it, but this was, he did this down at Chris Steele's place during Chris Steele's open house. Also, so it's an open house / the what was it, the fencing Olympics, I believe. So yeah. Let's get this started.
All right, guys, we're gonna test this gate and see what kind of weight it can unlock the gate. All right, gate works great right now, right? So we're gonna test this gate and see how much weight we can put on it. This is just a 2x4 built gate. We're in compression. We're at 45 degrees. We have cross grain going on, so we have to worry about warping of the 2x4.
So, well, here
We got cross grain on the brace. There's 3 2x4s here on this brace. The interior brace is split in the mid rail. We're gonna add some weight to it and see.
So that was, that came up earlier in the comments, right? So split the mid rail, let your compression brace be intact, be solid the entire time.
We can permanently well, get the gate to sag. I exaggerate the sagging. So, Chris, jump on that. How much weight does Chris weigh? 245. 245.
I would never have guessed that.
Head up. How much did you weigh? 190. 245, 190. So that's what? 435. 435. We have got probably an eighth of an inch of sag down there right now. Let's keep going, okay? 435. I weigh 180. So 180. Good, but my legs getting wet. So 180, 435 plus 180 is 535 plus 80, 615, 610. Right? Yep. Come on the outside. You can hang on there too. You can hang on right there. How much you weigh? 220. So now we're 600. That's 800. Right? At least 40. Let's see if it's close. Come here, look how close that is.
Oops, sorry. I'm right behind you.
Probably a 16th of an inch with 800 pounds on it. Get down in there. 800 plus pounds on there? Can we get 1,000 pounds on it?
Yes.
All right, let's do it. Who's my bigger guys? Okay, front.
Come on, David. Let's get on there.
You do the math.
Let's get on there.
Hey, before you hand us, do the math. 7,000 pounds. I gotta stand. I can't hold myself. All right. Go ahead, everybody, have fun. Oh shit, we got 1,200 pounds.
Ready?
Yep. Woo! 1,000 pounds, y'all. Bouncing. All right, hop on. Let's see how bad it's sagged. We were an 1/8 inch earlier. We're still, you can get a picture of about 1/8 inch. So 1,000 pounds, and we got that thing to move a good 8. What do you think? 1,000 pounds on there. I think it would take 1,500 pounds or better before we get that thing to fail. You think you can do that with any other brace? Anybody feel like you can do that in a metal frame? Let's try it. Let's try it. With a truss rod on it? Yeah, all day long. All day long? I think you, I mean, Nancy could. I think we're both going to get to the point of breaking the hinge.
That was happening now. Look where's it dropping from.
I think it's just the wood settling in is all it is. Right? There's no failure. That 1/8 of an inch that we just had.
Squeezing all the gaps.
Just squeezing all the gaps. What's that?
So we didn't even really make a tag in it. It's just the wood settling.
It's just settling.
So that's 1,000 pounds and it didn't move.
Pretty damn good.
You can't rack a metal gate.
You can't rack a metal gate. But I'll tell you that I get people telling me this is pretty aggressive looking. We've cleaned it up this time, right? We have a nice miter cut here and here. That looks better. This looks better here than we had before. So it looks better. But for someone to say the argument is, well, now it's too heavy.
So let's look at the framing real quick, just so we can all kind of be on board with what's going on here. So we've got the compression brace, the diagonal compression brace from the top of the outside of the gate down to the bottom of the bottom hinge side, right? So we're transferring all of this stress down to that hinge. Now he's cut the mid rail so that the compression hinge stays solid. Now, one thing he's done here too is he's added cross grain 2x4s to the top and to the brace. That way, trying to prevent warping and twisting, which makes sense because now that you've got grain going both ways, you've got cross grain support. It's going to keep it in line. I like this a lot.
That's the number one argument I hear. You added these 4 2x4s to it, and now the gate's too heavy. Think about that for a minute. How much do those 4 2x4s weigh? I mean, what do you think?
All right, wait a minute. So Sean said the mid rail is not cut. So let's look at this thing and see. All right, so maybe the rail. So maybe Sean, maybe the rail is bolted over your mid rail, your cross diagonal support, but it looks flush up here. I don't know. Maybe I and there's a very good chance I'm not looking at this thing correctly. Well, let's see if we can't get a close up on it.
5 pounds each, 10 pounds each, 10, 20, 30, 40 pounds. We just put 1,000 pounds on this sumbitch and it didn't move.
Bullshit.
You know what I mean? We got 1/8 of an inch out of it. So I don't buy the argument that these 4 2x4s are going to make the gate fail. Right? I don't buy that. It didn't. It's not. Now, how do we, over time, how does this weather? We have to have it up for a few years to see. But we're confident that the cross grain we're doing here is going to eliminate or really reduce the warping, right? And I don't find any argument in the weight of these are going to cause this gate to sag, right?
Okay, that makes more sense. So this is on its face. So okay, that makes more sense. That now. Okay, so they've got your mid rail here is cut at the diagonal, and then you've got cross grain here. All right, let's back it up. So
we're doing here.
We added 4 2x4s to Mark's design. So let's count them up here. So we've got 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this is on its. Let's
eliminate or really reduce the warping, right? And I don't find any argument in the weight of these are going to cause this gate to sag, right?
Okay, so that's an additional 2x4 then, Sean, it looks like. So you've got one here. I thought that was on its face. Well, no. So they added 4 2x4s to Mark's design. The basic idea here is that you've got cross grain support on this. You've got cross grain support here and here. That way, it's going to try to prevent this thing. So if you're looking at this thing straight on or from above, it's not going to want to warp out, right? It's going to keep this thing straight because now you've got grain going both ways, cross grain support to keep that thing's one, keep it from warping and twisting, but two, I mean, you just saw him put 1,000 pounds of guys on this gate and it got 1/8 of an inch. So I think you heard Chris Steele in the background, even if you went with a steel frame, which is what we do, your point of failure, all you're doing is you're transferring your point of failure, right? So all of the stress is trying to find the weakest link. So now you've taken the weakest link away from the frame, which is exactly what you want to do. You want to transfer that weak link away from the frame, and then you're going to get down to hinges. But you're going to need a significant amount of weight to fail a hinge, right? To lead a hinge to failure. So I like it. I dig it. So that was Sean's, and again, let me exit out of here and scroll down, let you guys see. So Mr. Fence Academy is the channel there. You guys can search that. And then, of course, like I said, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Give them some love there. Sean and Mark are both up to really good stuff. They're making sure, they're trying to elevate the industry as a whole by just sharing their education or sharing their experience, right? So I like what these guys are up to. And there's other guys. I don't mean just a single, us out or them out on that. But that's what we're here for. Right. That's why we all have channels, is so that we can try to elevate the industry as a whole. And as I always say, a rising tide raises all the ships, right? Rising tide raises all the ships. Yep, that sounds right. Agreed, Mark. Like I said, they put 1,000 pounds of guys on that. Yeah, and that's absolutely right, Sean. So we're trying to keep the treated lumber from warping when you don't have cedar, from warping and twisting. Because that's the thing. So treated pine, it's what it's going to do. So warping and twisting is typically the result of uneven drying. So you have the treatment that's going to it's not going to allow the moisture in this 2x4 picket or post transfer throughout the board, right? The treatment's going to freeze it in place. And one side's going to dry quicker than the other side. So the side that dries first, it's going to start pulling. It's going to start pulling that lumber together. It's going to tighten. It's going to start warping that direction. So absolutely. What's crazy is, so here locally in our market, here in Southwest Missouri, we can get cedar 2x4s cheaper than we can treated pine right now, which is absolutely bonkers. We've quit offering treated pine at this point just because at the price point, now treated pine pickets are less expensive than cedar pickets, but it's the only component in this whole thing that makes it that much cheaper. I think it saved. I had to go back and look at this. We did a calculation based on 200 foot and a couple gates, which is kind of our standard. And I think it saved $3 or $4 a foot by going to pine rather than cedar. And at $3 or $4 a foot, we don't have a valid argument for cost savings, right? For quality versus cost value. The pine is nowhere near the value of cedar when we're talking about longevity, when we're talking about aesthetics, in general fence quality, right? It's not even close to that. Now, if we're talking $10 or $12 a foot savings, now we're in a conversation. Now we will offer that. But for the time being, we're offering cedar pickets on cedar rails installed on steel posts. Ed Duffield says the first diagonal is cut around the mid-rail. The second diagonal is intact. The third diagonal is cross-grain. Yeah, so appreciate that, Ed. Took me a little bit to figure that out. I appreciate you guys looking out for us. Is that gate attached to that tall vertical support? Yeah, so it was bolted into that post, the gate post there. I agree, Chris. So we're metal frame here. So one of the comments was that you can't rack a metal frame gate. I guess that's true on site, right? You can't rack it on site, but okay. So I will preface this by saying currently we're still wet setting with concrete. So we have cure time. So typically the guys will measure the slope of a gate, and then we will build a custom gate in our fab shop during the 2-day dry time that we give that concrete. Now, I fully understand that there are other methods out there, to include dry pack compaction, to include driving post, where the goal is to get this job done in 1 day. And in that case, you're right. Steel frame gates, we're not going to be able to rack them on site. So we could either have the gate built while the posts are being driven and the fence is being built out and have it run to them, but that's an expense. Try to find the flattest place in the yard to put a gate, but we all know that a lot of times that's not available. So I get it. We're trying to find a solution that's somewhat of a one size fits all solution. Yeah, I agree, Chris. That gate is absolutely impressive. All right, I think we're caught up on comments. I think we're caught up on videos. So let me know in the comments below. Actually, we're getting close. We're at 2 hours and 12. Is that right? 2 hours and 12. So, yep, it's 12:12 right now. So we're getting pretty close to 12:30. What I want to do, guys, I want to give you guys a first look at today's video that's coming up that we're going to post after this comes up. That's a reaction video to April. Something I'm trying out here. All right. Let me pull that up. So give you guys, because you guys have been in this for a while. You guys have been sticking with me for a while. So I figured give you guys, kind of like I said, that first look, sneak peek of what this afternoon's video is going to be. So my process now is, since we do these lives on Saturday mornings, after I wrap this up, I go straight in. I mark my video. So right now my video is marked as private. I mark it as public, and I publish that dude out. So let me get in here, pull it up. Welcome back, everybody. All right. Pull it down and around to my share screen. All right, let's try this for a third time. Let's see if we get this all together on the first time. There we go. This looks familiar, right? All right, so let's get started. Give you guys a sneak peek of today's video that's coming up. If I can get my mouse around here. Joe Everest, the fence expert. You guys remember we did a 3-part series where I reacted to April Wilkerson's fence build. Well, she's built another fence. This one, though, looks like she built from the ground up. She built it from scratch. Remember the last video, she had existing posts. She modified those posts to be taller. Then she ended up having to do post surrounds. Well, this time she's building a whole new fence, and I can't wait to watch it.
In this video, I'm going to get started on building a horizontal board-on-board fence here in my new commercial space, the Woodshed. I actually broke this video into 2 parts because there's so much information to deliver. So if a fence is on your to-do list, and I hope that this helps you out. Let's get going.
Actually, before I get started on the process, let me show you the ending results, so you have an image in your head on what I'm going for as you follow along in the process. Total, the fence is 196 feet long and ended up being 8 feet high. On my last board and board fence, I kept my existing post and just extended them to the height needed. However, since I'm going with a horizontal fence, I will need a post every 6 feet, which is the length of the pickets I bought. That meant I wasn't able to reuse the existing post. You know, I'll add one thing. So she mentioned she's doing 6 foot because she's building a horizontal fence. Typically, anything over 6 feet tall, even if it's a vertical privacy fence, we'd still do posts at 6 foot spacings, try to give it more structural support. So this project started by ripping out the existing fence and post, then digging out for the new post hole locations. Once the holes were dug, it was time to start setting posts. For this entire build, I am using Western Red Cedar. I absolutely love the look of Western Red Cedar. It not only has such a beautiful, rich... I didn't mention in the video, but can you imagine the money she spent on these cedar posts? Like, it's wild to think about just the amount of money. Now, granted, she did her video. It's been a while, so lumber probably wasn't as crazy. But nowadays, like that, might as well deliver that in a Brinks truck. Rich coloring to it, but it's also naturally rot and weather resistant, making it one of my top picks for any project going outdoors. However, you are not supposed to put cedar in direct contact with concrete. So before putting the post in the ground, I first treated the bottoms of each post with... I would probably argue that she would have saved money going with the steel post. Even now, April's pretty good at finding sponsors for her videos. You know, she built out her wood shop, and she had vendors come supply like the vacuum system and install it for her. She could have found a supplier for the post if she went steel, but even still at full retail, I would have to think that she would probably had a cost savings using steel posts rather than 4x4 Western Red Cedar posts. Those things had to be expensive. Unless, I mean, she might have had a sponsor for the wood post, I suppose. With a protecting agent called copper naphthenite. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Naphthenite. It's funny that different regions pronounce things differently. So we would call that copper naphthenate. Yeah. To speed up this process, I grabbed a cardboard. Yeah, we have a competitor here in our market that uses what they call copperwood, which is a copper naphthenate solution. The only reason I know. Well, and like I said, that's how it's pronounced in our region. It could be pronounced differently in other regions. That copper naphthenate has a very distinct smell. Or tubed and lined up, kind of similar to like a creosote, with a heavy-duty trash bag. Then used a simple strap to secure it at an angle to the bandsaw mill's bed. Simple straps are stretchy and can conform to any tying pattern. It's just a few quick wraps, tuck the end into itself, and then I was ready to go. I poured 2 gallons into the tube and then grabbed the first post and set it in gently, just making sure the corner wouldn't tear open the liner. You can see when I pull it out that about 3 feet of the post is covered. If you can tolerate the shoulder workout, I definitely think a dipping method is better than brushing or rolling on the liquid. But that's another great thing about Western Red Cedar. It is extremely light. So this is a good idea to coat the posts before they go in, just to add a barrier of protection between the post and the concrete and the post and any moisture that's in the ground. There's actually specific products made for this type of application. The Post Saver product comes to mind. It's a sleeve that goes on the post that once it's heat treated, it prevents moisture and rot. Might be a little bit more straightforward than
trying to dip all these posts, but one way or the other, putting a barrier in there is always a good idea.
So while it was a shoulder workout, it really wasn't all that bad. After dipping a post, I would set it aside and let it dry, then move on to the next. Okay, let's actually start setting the post. One of the most important things to set up with the fence or anything you want straight is a string line. This runs from the very end point of the fence to the start. And this is set 1 inch forward from where the post fronts needs to end up.
So that's something that we've talked about in other videos is when you are using a string line, use an offset string line. In her case, she went a few inches. Typically, we would go somewhere like 6 inches to a foot, depending on terrain, so that the string line can always stay up. You don't have to take it down when you're installing your post. And we actually shot a video last week with Mr. Fence's equalizer. So that video will be out. I think we've got like a month or month and a half worth of content in queue right now, but even better than this method. And you don't end up bumping that string over time.
A lot of times you see people set a string line and then butt the object directly against it. However, with that, you run the risk of slightly bumping and altering the string line as you work down the line. By having an offset, you completely cut out that chance. When we were positioning it, we would set the face off the string line by 1 inch exactly. And I'll go ahead and tell you now that this fence came out extremely straight. Another key point to focus on with this style of fence is that the posts turn out to be exactly 6 feet on center. With a vertical fence, the posts matter, but aren't as critical because the rails can be cut to the needed length. But with a horizontal fence, the length of picket determines where the posts are. We pulled a tape on each and every hole before setting the post to make sure it was drilled in the correct location.
So this framing,
and plenty of them.
This framing, I'll pause it here in a minute, but this framing is kind of unique in the way that she frames everything up, or she supports everything during the setting process.
Weren't, so be sure to check. We had to chisel out so many of these holes with a rock bar and shovel to get the post to not only land on the needed distance between, but also the 1 inch off the string line. Once the position of the hole was good, then we actually started setting the post. First dumping in some river rocks to create a standoff off the bottom and keep the post from being in direct contact with the ground.
So that's something you hear a lot in regions that have more clay in the soil that might hold more water in the soil is putting gravel at the bottom of the hole. It's not something we do, but if you're in an area that has high clay content, it's not going to let that water drain very easily. Putting gravel at the bottom of the hole could help with it.
The idea here is moisture will pull at the bottom of these holes, but the gravel will prevent the.
So she supports these posts in two ways. So from the bottom of one post to, I don't know, a little bit above midway up the next, and then she also does them laterally as well. Kind of an interesting bracing method, I guess. So she gets them all stood up first before she even starts pouring concrete.
The post from sitting in it and therefore being damaged from it. Next, the post goes in and then gets stabilized with 2 2x4s. The first thing when the post goes in is to get the sitting position correctly. This is where we'll make sure it's not only 6 feet from the previous post, but also 1 inch from the string line. And then we would set the braces. For one of the braces, we actually used the previous post instead of driving in a stake. This is held into place at the bottom with a screw and also gave us a way to square up the post to the previous post. After Jake secured the bottom, we would use a clamp to hold it in rough position. Next, I would grab the second brace, eyeball where it would land on the adjacent face, and drove a stake into the ground to secure this other end. It's
an interesting bracing method. I haven't seen that bracing method used before, but now that you sit and look at it and hear it explained, it makes a lot of sense.
While I was doing that, you could see Jake using a second clamp to hold the top up. Now that it was roughed in, we did all of the fine-tuning. This entailed using a level on 2 adjacent faces to plumb it up. We would loosen one clamp at a time and reset it when the post was plumb in that direction. After being reset, one of us would come back with a screw to hold it more securely while we moved on to repeat the process with the next one. Setting the post actually goes very quickly once the hole locations are correct. If you have good ground or even just a good auger operator, then the process should be a breeze. It took us 2 days instead of 1 to set all of the posts because we were having to finesse so many of these by hand. After they were all set up though, next it was time to set them in concrete. This is a pretty straightforward process. Each post took roughly 2 bags, sometimes a bit more, and with this many posts, I definitely recommend either buying or renting a concrete mixer. This way you can pour the bags in, add water from a hose, and then let it take some work off your plate.
So depending on how many holes you have to set rather, on a project like this where you could get a larger truck in there fairly easily, you could also purchase delivered concrete. Depending on how many holes you have, I almost think that she probably depends on the minimum load that your concrete provider requires. But I'd almost think with this many holes, taking that much concrete per hole, she might have saved herself a little bit of time just contracting out the concrete delivery.
Sometimes it was difficult to get the mixer close enough to pour into the hole without bumping into the post itself. And a tip for this is you can use a shovel to catch and direct the concrete as somebody else pours it. Then, of course, you can just scoop out the last bit by hand if needed. You can either tilt the mixer and drag it out, or use a shovel in the traditional way and dump it in. It's best to pour in enough concrete to mound up slightly past the surface of the ground. Then the idea is to sculpt it so that the water will want to shed away from the post itself and not pour around it. To do this, I actually used a putty knife to build it up at the base of the post and then sloped it down and smoothed it out. After repeating on every single post and letting it sit overnight, that was one of the major steps down, which of course is always a great feeling.
So Mark's got a good point. Always chuckle when I see the time wasted bracing posts while the concrete cures. I agree. So, and the part I chuckle at is the because the comments typically that they built it themselves to save money, right? And you really have to think about how you value your time. So she said they took 2 days to dig and brace that. And maybe she said to set it also, but still 2 days to do this. I mean, the labor cost on this, especially seeing how when they did the concrete sheet, took the time with the putty knife to slope each concrete away from the post. There's a ton of labor there. I would argue she probably didn't save a whole lot by doing it this way, but each their own.
Now, at this point, the posts are just left long or tall. So the next step is to cut them all to the wanted height. It's at this point you can determine how tall you want your fence and make them all that measurement. I personally live in the county and don't have any regulations on height, so I let the shortest post of mine determine the height, which came out to be 8 feet. Since I have a transit, which is a laser level system, I used it to make a level mark on every single post.
So I'm going to back this up and highlight Mark's point. So look at all that lumber. Like especially in today's day and age, knowing what we pay for lumber, even knowing what fence contractors will pay on the wholesale level, like that is a tremendous amount of lumber. Now she does woodworking, so you gotta hope that she's got a use for it elsewhere. But just the amount of lumber she needed to have on hand to do all that bracing, added another $1,000 to this, depending on how many of these braces she had. Those braces are 2x4, probably 8s or 10s. She said they're 6 foot on center, so probably 8s to get the diagonal. But 2x4 8s are treaty pine right now, or $13.50 a piece. So maybe not $1,000. She had several $100s worth of lumber simply for bracing.
Difficult to get the mixer close enough to pour into the hole without bumping into the post itself. And a tip for this is you can use a shovel to catch and direct the concrete as somebody else pours it. Then, of course, you can just scoop out the last bit by hand if needed. You can either tilt the mixer and drag it out, or use a shovel in the traditional way and dump it in. It's best to pour in enough concrete to mound up slightly past the surface of the ground. Then the idea is to sculpt it so that the water will want to shed away from the post itself and not pour around it. To do this, I actually used a putty knife to build it up at the base of the post and then sloped it down and smoothed it out. After repeating on every single post and letting it sit overnight, that was one of the major steps down, which of course is always a great feeling. Now at this point, the posts are just left long or tall. So the next step is to cut them all to the wanted height. It's at this point you can determine how tall you want your fence and make them all that measurement. I personally live in the county and don't have any regulations on height, so I let the shortest post of mine determine the height, which came out to be 8 feet. Since I have a transit, which is a laser level system, I used it to make a level mark on every single post. It doesn't matter where this mark is, as long as it's the exact same on each and every one. If you aren't familiar with the Transit, a laser is set on a tripod and projects out a laser in a level line. Then you use a handheld receiver that picks up the laser and indicates if you need to move up or down to be in line. After all of the posts are marked, now a story stick, which is just a jig essentially, can be made and clamped in position to indicate where all the different cuts and marks are needed.
That's very interesting. You know, I've seen levels set a lot of different ways, but with her system, I think that makes a lot of sense. If you're building fences as a profession, I can see that making sense. DIY crowd, you might see if they have a piece of hardware like that available for rent. I see that. I could absolutely see the justification for it, especially if you're a professional fence builder. Makes a lot of sense.
See, every post will need to be cut to length, but every post will also need a top and bottom rail. So all of these things can be marked at the same time to not only make the process quick, but also accurate. I would line up my story stick to the transit mark on each post, then use a pencil to mark my top and bottom marks. Next, I started by cutting all of the posts at the same height. This is done with a circular saw and 2 cuts on 2 opposite faces. After getting the post to height, I cut out a notch on the top of every other post, which the reason why won't make a lot of sense now, but it will in the next step. It was again 2 cuts with the circular saw to make this cut. The first one was a plain horizontal cut across the face. Then the second cut was a vertical cut along the top end grain. Don't be alarmed if your blade starts smoking some. Just take your time on the cut because it's really hard grain to cut through. I needed a bit more depth on this cut after going all the way across the post, so I used a sawzall to finish off the cut on each side. The posts are almost done being prepped at this point, but there's one more thing needed before the rails can go in, and that's hardware. To have a really clean, nice face, the rails need to be mounted to the inside of the post. So next, Jake went to each and every one and used a nail gun to attach the hanging hardware. These rely on the bottom-most mark from the story stick and are lined up flush to the front face of the post. While he was doing that, I was getting the measurements for each rail. You can most certainly just pull a tape, but I recently discovered the glories of a laser tape measure, where all I had to do is hold it butted up against the start of what I want to measure and point.
Ed, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. Best of luck with the gate to round out. You had said what? You said 300 foot earlier? Let me see here. There's a lot of comments today. Regardless, Ed, thank you so much for joining us and sticking with us for so long. Best of luck on that gate you're building. If you run into any questions or comments, anything like that, drop in the comments below here. I watch this, or you can send me an email at joe@thefenceexpert.show. Agreed. Thank you, Roger. All right. So far, she adds quite a bit of work. Like as a fence professional, when you watch this, there's a lot of extra work here, right? But the fence turns out pretty nice.
Point it to the end. So in this case, the hardware bracket, and boom, it gives me the exact readout on what my measurement is. The rails are 2x4s, again, sticking with Western Red Cedar here, and cut down to the length so that they fit in the hardware placed on the inside of the post. Since the posts are 6 feet on center, these turn out to be a little less than 6 feet each. So just a tip, instead of buying 8 footers and having 2 feet of wasted material on each board, I bought 12 footers and got 2 rails from one board, just ending up with a few inches of wasted material on each.
That's a great tip. You know, reducing the amount of waste material is always a good idea, but especially currently when we're in the middle of a wood shortage, the price of this lumber is skyrocketed. So any material you can save from being wasted is essentially money in your pocket.
After I cut all of the bottom rails, it was a simple matter of slipping them right into place. Then I repeated by moving to the top. However, instead of going from the inside to the inside of each post, the top actually spans 2 bays and ties 3 posts together, which will help with rigidity and also keep things straight. And this is the reason for the notch in the top of every other post.
I like that a lot. So a lot of times when you're talking to fence guys, some fence guys will nail section to section. So in this case, 6 foot at a time between each 2x4 is only 6 feet. And then other guys will say, well, we'll do the skipping method, so you'll use 12 foot, right? And you'll offset the overlaps. So she's actually using kind of both methods. for the best of both worlds to get the strength and stability, but also ease.
It allows the 12-foot rail to go from the inside of one post, pass through the second, and then attach to the inside of the third. This slips into the hanging hardware just as easily as the bottoms. So I first cut and then placed every board in their needed location, then came back and did all of the attaching. For the hanging hardware, I used a palm nailer to very quickly drive the nails in their holes. Then I used a nailer to secure the top stringer in the notch of the center post. Okay, one last step and then the substructure of the fence will be complete. The pickets will be horizontal and running from one post to the other, but that leaves a little less than 6 foot span in between. To give it rigidity, we next added in a center vertical support member. This will give the picket a third member to attach to when they start getting added. Again, you can definitely use a regular tape on each section to get a measurement, but I used my laser tape again to make quick work of it. I first found center in each bay, then directed my laser straight up. Once I had all my measurements, I made the cuts, then attached each board into place with a few nails. You can see I'm using a spacer there on the right to make sure the top and bottom are the same distance away from the post.
In my opinion, that is not bad for 4 days, especially with such rocky terrain. Now, keep in mind that if you have a fence on your...
So again, guys, the difference here. So she's 4 days in, and she has it framed and railed. Well, kind of, she's got the structure up. I don't know, what her and her husband's times work, but I'd say the labor cost on this fence is going to be pretty high. If you were to track her
It's
time.
not going to be this difficult if you don't have rocky terrain and if your post holes are dug in the correct location by whoever you hire that job out to. And I definitely do think it's worth hiring out the post hole digging itself. Stay tuned for part 2 where I show you the next steps, which is going to include picketing, top cap, trim, and then finishing out the ground area.
Guys, I think the first part of this turned out really well.
All right, guys, so that's this week's video. We'll be posting it live. I keep saying we like I've got a mouse in my pocket, but I'll be posting it live here, in the next half hour or so when we wrap this up and head downstairs and go ahead and get it up and live. So if you guys would like to rewatch that will be live on the channel here in just a little bit. We got one more question. Josh Lingerich, appreciate you joining us. Any tips on stretching woven wire across uneven terrain? So, a couple things. One, my company doesn't specialize in agricultural fencing. It's not a thing here in our region. That being said, we are checking out SWI Fences videos earlier. I would absolutely suggest you heading over to their channel. He's got a lot of good content. I'm fairly certain he covered that with the video from the Fall Fence Forum. Where that was one of the contests was woven wire on uneven terrain. Check out SWI Fence. You can also search on YouTube Fall Fence Forum where they show that there. Hope that helps. Roger, I agree. So 4 days would never work from a business perspective. That's a ton of labor. It really is. Even on a 2-person crew, that's still a lot. Raj says, thanks, Joe and Mark and Sean for stopping by. Please all keep doing what you do. I appreciate that a lot. Josh, you're very welcome. Well, guys, appreciate you sticking with me. If you guys have questions or comments, drop them in the comments below. I watch the comments throughout the week. I try to respond back to them as quickly as possible. Sometimes there's a lot of comments that come in all at once, so it might take me a little bit to get through them, but I try to respond to each and every comment as I have time. Well, guys, for now, I'm Joe Everest, the fence expert, and I'm reminding you that good fences make good neighbors. And I'll see you guys next week.